Slava Ukraini.
Hello, Slava. Yeah. Mark the interview after the interview because Ming and I think, are a little bit nervous. And we've also got, I think we're going to have another special guest appearing with us, but it was very early in the morning for her, so I didn't know if she could make it. But Rebecca Maciorowski is going to be coming as well, I think. So, yeah, double trouble. Well, double good stuff, really. So looking forward to that. I can see Will down on the panel, and I can see Philip. How are you both doing?
Good morning, Shaggy.
Doing well.
I just thought I would quickly join to say hello to Mick and to Beka, and then I would drop down again afterwards.
All right, super. Will, how are you?
Doing well. Wouldn't dream of missing Mick Ryan. I wasn't available to co-host with you, but I definitely want to hear Mick and Rebecca. It's great to get them in both.
Excellent. Well, I've just managed to get Mick up onto the panel now. I just want to check Ming's audio. Ming, are you
sound check from my end?
Oh yeah, sound check. That's 7x5. I call that one. Very good, very good. And Mick, welcome. Just check that your microphone works.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be with you, and thank you for the invitation to come and talk.
Okay, thanks very much. Sorry about the card. I only got your message a little bit earlier, so I've now quickly changed that.
No problem at all.
Okay, all right. We've got you into civilian clothes now, so we're all good. So
yeah,
welcome.
Just to get the formalities out of the way, what do we call you, sir? Do we call you General Mick, or just Mick, or
Mick sounds
General?
Good. Mick's my name.
So Mick it is.
Okay, well, excellent. All right, well, let's get the show on the road. So I've been going through your timeline, Mick. Over the last couple of days, you've posted quite a lot of updates about what's happening in Ukraine. I'm curious about the weather change. So what's your view of what's the weather is going to be doing to operations in Ukraine as we get into autumn and winter?
Well, I think the weather will do what it always does. I mean, I think the rough, program is there's a bit of rain, which then turns into snow, which then turns into rain. So you have this mud season, which isn't universal through every area in Ukraine, but it's common enough that it has an impact on military operations. I think the combination of thinking about the weather coming and thinking about the US election has really driven the Russians in the last few months to significantly up the tempo of their operations. I think they see an opportunity between now and November to force the issue, to take territory, to make it appear that their victory is inevitable. So I think that between now and the coming of the rains and the coming of the snow eventually, you're going to see the Russians at least attempt to try and continue this fairly significant tempo of operations in eastern Ukraine.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not military, Mick, so I'm sorry about that. My armchair, I'm not even armchair general, but my thought was they were trying to push through as much as they could while the weather was good. Do you think that?
No, that's what I was trying to get across. Absolutely, there's an opportunity to get as much done, before the weather changes and before the US election. So I think it's a convergence of both that's really, seen this significant increase in Russian tempo, and it's seen them, advance on multiple axes of advance in eastern Ukraine, albeit at massive cost to them in both people and equipment. But we've seen that in the last couple of years as well. That that's kind of a seasonal impact on military affairs. People get ground rush before the rains or the snow start and try and get as much as they possibly can get done before the tempo of operations inevitably slows. It doesn't stop things, but it certainly slows things and changes the nature of military operations in winter.
Mick, may I ask, how do you assess the gravity of the situation for Ukraine, given these Russian advances? I have to say, overall, I wouldn't view them as being particularly impressive myself, particularly in terms of the amount of territory they've seized. But that's not to say that they haven't seized, for example, they have Volya, which is a reasonably important strategic hub, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't taken, thousands and thousands of square kilometres. I think the impact is the effect that it's had on the Ukrainian military. Clearly, there are many units in the Ukrainian military that are crying out for reinforcements and for more munitions, and the Russian operations have magnified that. I think too that with the Ukrainian operations in Kursk, brilliant battlefield achievement, but they haven't really forced any change in the politics or the strategy of Russia or NATO, the United States, and it hasn't significantly drawn Russian forces from areas that really matter. So, the situation at the moment for Ukraine, notwithstanding the massive losses that Russia has taken, the situation looks reasonably grim at the moment, which is why you do have President Zelensky doing this tour of Washington, of London, of Paris, and other places to try and get people to buy into this victory plan to up assistance to Ukraine because it's needed.
Thanks very much. Will, you have a question, and I'd like to just welcome Rebecca to the panel as well. Welcome, Rebecca. Will?
Thanks. G'day, Mick. Good to see you again. As I always do, I'm going to bring you back to Australia. Given the Senate inquiry and the report on that, which I was surprisingly pleased about, the recommendations being pretty direct and contained a lot of what was in my submission and yours. Do you see any change in Australia's position with regard to Army surplus and other support for Ukraine as a result of that Senate report, and the press that is on by Zelensky now that he's got the plan laid out there? Do you see any discussion and further support being forthcoming from Australia in the near future, meaning next quarter?
It's hard to tell with the current government. This isn't a government that has any real traditional expertise in national security affairs. And it would be fair to say that their support for Ukraine has been more lukewarm than the previous government. That said, they have continued to support Ukraine. I think the recommendations, remember that's all it is in the Senate inquiry report, the recommendations have been presented to government, and it's now up to the government to decide which ones of those recommendations it takes up. It might agree with all of them and do nothing. It might agree with some of them and do something, or it might decide to just let this stay on the back burner until it calls an election at some point in the first half of next year. So it's hard to see which way they'll go. They will want to think there's a benefit to their electoral prospects if they're to allocate further aid to Ukraine. That's always part of the calculus. So, I think it's on people like me and others to get out there and beat the drum, which I'll certainly be doing once I get back home next week, to, ensure that people are writing to their local members and saying, well, why aren't we acting on this inquiry? This is pretty important, not just for the people of Ukraine, but people in democracies more broadly.
Any follow-up, Will?
No, I agree with that in full. I mean, I've been fairly cynical myself, especially with the fact that I was very vocal trying to get people to respond to that Senate inquiry. I submitted my response, I think the fourth one that went in, but of course they didn't even accept mine until after all the discussion was over. So I was thinking it was a bit of an exercise in whitewash, but then I read the final report, and the final report had essentially looked like three of the recommendations I could have written. But the key to it is, to me, Mick, is uh, uh, I'm not sure this government completely grasps the strong and continued support for Ukraine. In the Lowy Institute polls that have come out over the past 2 years, Australians consistently get this issue. They get it. They want more military aid for Ukraine, and if they ask them about general aid, the number goes up from 70% to over 80%. And I just don't understand here and in America why some politicians don't get behind this issue as a uh, the way you stated it. It's an important issue for Ukraine, but the support for liberal democracy at home and abroad is something that's very important in all the liberal democracies around the world, because I see us all getting a bit muddled and not understanding and taking a bit for granted what we've got. And I was just curious. So the in specific, do you think there's any major impediment to the provision of the leftover now M1A1 Abrams tanks? Those are the tanks that are capable of being exported, obviously because we got them, and do you think it's a realistic prospect that we might pressure the government into freeing those specific items up when we can't even get them to admit the FA-18 fighters really exist?
I think there's a better prospect of the M1s, and you've certainly seen a change of the kind of statements government is making over them. I think they've just got to find the right justification of why they changed their attitude. What they don't seem to understand is people don't care if they change their mind. They just want the right aid to go to Ukraine. So there's a moral kind of problem in how they're making these decisions. It's all about their electoral prospects when people are dying on the battlefield, and we could provide these things. There's been all these debates about the M1's too complex and all this. I mean, it's a garbage argument. I've commanded a brigade with M1s. If the Australian Army can maintain the M1s, anyone can, I've got to tell you. And the Ukrainians have had more tanks and built tanks and maintained tanks at a much higher level than the Australian Army ever has. So they can do this. But I still think we need to keep the pressure on the government, not just for M1s, but, as I put in my Senate submission, every single bit of equipment that's being disposed of by the Army that is no longer required should automatically be considered for being sent to Ukraine, whether it's boots, whether it's cold weather gear, whether it's four-wheel drives, which, every unit needs. There's a whole bunch of things we get rid of routinely, that it should be mandatory to first and foremost make a decision: can this go to Ukraine or not?
All right, thanks very much. So just zooming out a little bit, so on a more geopolitical level, so with Ramstein being postponed, it was supposed to be scheduled for the leaders' meeting tomorrow, the first one at Ramstein, for Ramstein's 25th meeting, and President Biden not being able to go because of Hurricane Milton. President Zelensky has been wandering around Europe, went to the UK, went to Italy, France, was he Croatia? I think he went to 4 countries in one day. What effect do you think this cancelled Ramstein or this postponed Ramstein meeting is going to have on the victory plan that President Zelensky was going to present? Obviously, it won't have a problem on the actual plan itself, but the timing of the plan. Any views on that, Mick?
Yeah, well, I think Biden didn't have any choice but to postpone it. I mean, there is no way that he could have politically flown out of the US when a very significant natural disaster like Hurricane Milton occurs, and that's only magnified by the fact that we're within a month of a US presidential election. I mean, I don't like it, but that's just the reality of the situation, unfortunately. What that might mean, it may give the Ukrainians a little bit more time to incorporate the feedback that they've received from countries like the US, UK, France, and others to kind of hone the plan before it's released publicly. So it could be of benefit. But at the end of the day, it's unfortunate this Ramstein leaders meeting was postponed because, we've been faffing around with a strategy for some time now. US doesn't have a strategy for Ukraine at the moment. It presented something to Congress, but no one knows about. NATO's strategy is basically encapsulated in the term "for as long as it takes." Well, that's a slogan, not a strategy. No one in NATO, including the US, will say publicly that Russia needs to lose this war, that Russia needs to be beaten. So, we have a real problem with the strategy for the war to support Ukraine. Hopefully, the victory plan might shift the needle on that. But I'm not going to hold my breath. I think Western countries and the politicians that lead them have become very risk adverse. They're happy to do things that make them feel good and are comfortable for their publics, but anything that seems a little uncomfortable seems to be beyond Western polities. And to be quite frank, the United States at the moment cares more about Russia losing than Ukraine losing this war, and that is both a strategic and a moral tragedy.
Yeah, this fear of escalation, it does a lot, drives us all nuts because we know that Russia needs to be defeated on the battlefield to learn a lesson and to be pushed back.
I think, Shaggy, I slightly disagree with you. It's not a fear of escalation. That's just a term used to cloak something else. It's a fear of having to manage the scale of Russia's possible defeat, which I frankly think is completely idiotic because, whatever happens in Russia is completely unmanageable.
Well, we should also remember that when the US lost in Vietnam, the country didn't collapse. So there are historical examples of superpowers losing wars without using nuclear weapons or without collapsing totally. So, a collapse of Russia and losing in Ukraine are two separate issues. Unfortunately, too many people seem to think they're the same thing. Can I just suggest we bring Beka into the conversation? Because I'm really excited that she's able to join us on this space.
Yeah, Rebecca, if you're able to chat, she was going to be listening just first of all. It's very early in the morning for her, but Rebecca, feel as I messaged you, feel free to say anything whenever you'd like, basically, if you're about.
Hey, I'm here. What's up, guys? Good to see you. Happy to be here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you 5x5.
You bet.
Mick would love to talk to you.
All right, perfect.
Absolutely, I would. I've been following Beka almost since the beginning of the war, and constantly amazed and inspired by what you're doing to support and save the lives of hundreds, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, to train other combat medics. You're demonstrating the kind of courage that many of us hope we're capable of. And it's great to have you here. And I think there's a lot you can tell us about, the Ukrainian armed forces, about what modern war looks like, and just the basics of how war has an impact on human beings. So I hope you're able to talk about some of those things. But I'm really excited that you're able to join this today.
I'm actually super excited too, and I love questions. I love discussions. If there's something that you're wondering, like something day to day, something a little bit bigger, some obscure idea, I'm always willing to try and think of an answer or give you some kind of information. So yeah, so excited to talk to you too, Mick. This is awesome.
Well, Beka, could you just describe to us what your average day with your brigade looks like?
Of course. So my average day is super varied. But in my role right now, I am working at a like a notch med level, which is the head of like medical logistics, medical coordination, evacuation coordination, like vehicle maintenance. It is basically everything that one person needs to do to ensure that a battalion, and sometimes other battalions of the brigade, are ready to evacuate the wounded, receive the wounded when they come, ensure that the wounded have enough supplies, ensure that the evacuation points are not safe, ensure the safety of the soldiers being evacuated. Let's see, provide logistical support, make sure the vehicles are intact. There's gas for the vehicles. The vehicles have anti-drone systems. Every crew member is personally equipped. Keep constant contact with the EW, like electronic warfare team, to find out what frequencies are being used for the FPVs and other drones. Make sure we have good tires. Ensure that radio stance and radio stance. Wow, look at me trying to say Ukraine. The radios are encrypted and working and charged, and each team member gets one. Each evac vehicle gets one. Ensure that there's checks hourly between each positions, both the combat positions and also the evacuation positions, which are probably 2 kilometers behind the combat positions. Coordinate alternate routes in case one route gets mined, there's an ambush, etc., etc. Receive the wounded, provide the care, fill out the documentation, and then make sure the crew goes back out. I don't know. It's a lot.
It sounds like about 30 hours worth of work having to be squeezed in each 24 hours.
I always run out of time, but I've got great crew, and we all kind of work together. So, and this also comes with like your basic. While you're planning this, you're also under artillery attack yourself. You're trying to find like another EcoFlow or another Starlink, because the ones that you had before have been destroyed by artillery. And this is on a moving scale. So all of this is continually moving. I think one thing people don't understand is how easily in 1 second artillery can land and on one evac point, and you have now been set back 6 months. My biggest thing with, because I'm in the US right now for finally a little bit of a break, just to see my family, and my little brother is having his first niece, and within 24 hours of me leaving, stuff already started to go awry, and that was my biggest fear. And then of course in 2 days the evacuation spot gets hit by artillery. The evacuation vehicle is destroyed. New evacuation routes have to plan, all the stuff that I was supposed to do. And this is just in the span of a couple days. And I think people don't understand how quickly the face of war is changing, how quickly the battle lines are changing, how quickly technology is advancing, and we have to counteract that. And how much a lack of infrastructure and material goods affects everything. Anyway.
And you seem to be able to do an amazing amount with very little. But as I'd say to everyone who's listening, if you have a chance to support Beka and what she does, you can go to her Twitter and have a look on there. There's ways you can do that. It's certainly a great way to support the Ukrainian war efforts to help people save lives. Beka, I know there's others who want to ask you questions. I'll just ask, but how did you find yourself in your current position? Working with the Ukrainian military to do what you're doing at the moment.
So when I came over to Ukraine initially, I was prepared to work in any like healthcare setting or health setting that required my help. And I was so fortunate to really just embed with the Ukrainian unit. And I realized so quickly that the Ukrainian military needed medics. They needed trained professionals so badly. So badly, because there just is a massive shortage of trained, like highly qualified medical professionals that can work in a war. Because think about this, like, you might, in peacetime, you might have so many medics, but when there's a war going on, you have now added so many soldiers, so many different battalions and brigades. You're constantly acquiring new ones, and you don't have the medic scale that you need to take care of the new army that is being rapidly developed. So my role in the beginning was one of just embedding with the Ukrainian soldiers and being their medic, and then it very quickly turned into I couldn't leave, and then I started to train other medics because we're getting more, and I was working at a like a company level at first. So I just was working with a medical like company group, and then it moved on. I was like, okay, let's go into the battalion, right? Let's train some more for this particular battalion. Then the other battalion commanders started talking to each other, said, okay, Beka can train you and evacuate your guys. So then I moved on to the next battalion and the next battalion and the next battalion. Before I knew it, I had started evacuating and training for the brigade. And then another brigade, our sister brigade, found out and said, okay, we've got an American nurse here, and she's done these evacuations and she's training our guys, and it's really helping. Can you come over and help us too? And I can't say no. So it just kind of is how it happened. Um, so now I have signed officially in the military with like I wouldn't say OG brigade, but the brigade I've lived at the longest. But I do continue to go out when I can, and train other brigades as well. It just kind of evolves step by step, I guess.
It's funny how that happens in military organizations. People seem to think it's always totally formalized and structured and hierarchical, and it is often. But sometimes when you come across someone who's flexible, knowledgeable, and professional like you, everyone wants a piece of you.
And this is war too. So the commanders and the soldiers themselves are incentivized to do everything they can to take care of each other, to keep their men alive. And there's nothing more motivated than a commander who has watched his soldiers die, a soldier who's watched his friends die, and soldiers that have been in battle and not had a medic, and wanted or had a buddy die and didn't know what to do. They are so incentivized to learn. And it like kind of breaks these barriers of like bureaucracy and red tape and this, oh, we need a paper here and a paper there in terms of teaching. And they would call me, can you come to the bunker tonight? Can you come to the position tonight? Listen, we're shooting some howitzers, but the guy at the howitzers position, he just got wounded, and all the boys there that are left, they need to know what they should have done. And of course, I will teach anywhere. And I'm teaching to a group of so motivated, so adaptable, innovative people that are actively interested in how to save each other. And that's cool.
Yep. Absolutely. It's amazing, and like you said, war is all about learning, because it's changing so quickly in every dimension, and people are motivated to learn. That old saying, "Adapt or die," is a real thing. You really need to keep learning, don't you?
Absolutely.
Well, I've probably taken up enough of your time, and I know there's other people with their hands up, so I think I'll hand back the microphone so others can ask you some questions.
It's perfectly fine, Mick. One of my aims for a very long time is to get you and Rebecca up on the stage together so you can talk to each other. So that's my main aim today, basically, is
Fantastic.
You two asking questions to each other. We can quickly go to Will, though, and then we can get back to you, Rebecca, chatting in a bit. Will, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've always got more for Mick, but I've got one for Rebecca, which is Rebecca, with all of the news back and forth, the continued consternation about where aid is going to come in. My two questions are: what is morale like on the ground with a typical, if there is one, unit within Ukraine? Do they still know that the vast majority of the world supports them? And what's their biggest need right now that we might help them out with, if you could change one thing?
So I can tell you for a fact that morale is varied. And it really depends unit to unit. The biggest thing that we face right now is a lack of combat rotations. So we, just my brigade, are continuously at the combat line because we do not, we don't have any senior soldiers really left. The soldiers that had started at the beginning of the war, most of them have passed away, are now incredibly injured to the point they cannot serve. And we have a very few seasoned professional soldiers left. So we are now seeking to make NCOs out of people that, you know, weeks before were a project manager or, ran a small IT company. And so basically the job is like, okay, the commanders that are left, okay, cool. IT, beautiful. Let's put you in some logistics. What did you do before? You drove semi trucks. Okay, perfect. Let's see if we can train you on some Technic, which is what we call our armored vehicles. The morale is still hopeful though, and it's hopeful in the sense that every day they're hoping that change will come, that more aid will come. I can tell you concretely the need that we see the most and every single day is ammunition, because without ammunition we are absolutely unable to even defend ourselves, much less keep the ground. We can't keep the ground we have without ammunition, and we certainly aren't able to take new ground in at least my AO. So, like, just rounds like 120, 82, 122, 152, 60s, these armored vehicles, MRAPs, Hummers, um, Bradleys, these things, electronic warfare communication stuff, which at this point we can't really take because we're the leading edge of it, because we're doing the most. Mine clearing equipment, all of these things are so incredibly important. Mortar systems. Um, Unfortunately, when it comes to like the rocket systems and the air defense stuff, as you and I both know, some of that stuff has not even been made. So we won't see that until 2025. And a lot of the aid that's coming in is delayed because if you look at how it's being done, like I just posted about this too because I was tired of answering all these questions. People are like, well, what's happening to all our money? We are essentially, it's what the Ukrainians call the lend lease, right? We are receiving money, but it's not just like free money. It is money that we're paying back into the U.S. to defense contractors to make us the equipment that we need. And so this takes time. What you said, Mick, really resonated with me. If there is any military equipment that is going to be shuttled off, replaced, not used, send it. Send it. Because while we wait for like new things, we could very easily use anything that's old. And we will. I think that any like Western military that has like a shelf life on products, right, or is looking to upgrade a military system and is not sure that they want to do anything with the old one, it's going to be scraped. Send it to Ukraine because there is an immediate need for it, and they will teach themselves.
Yeah, right. Mick, any follow-up question for Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I find it extraordinarily frustrating that we don't get this basic principle. It's like whatever you can send now, send.
Mm-hmm.
A stitch in time saves nine. It's an old saying, but it matters on the battlefield. If you can do something now, you will save yourself blood and tears down the track. And every little bit of support we can provide, whether it's ammunition, equipment, moral support, countering Russian misinformation, every little scrap of it, regardless of what your country can do, really, really matters. And not just on the battlefield, I think it matters that the Ukrainians know there's people, from the other side of the world who care about what they're fighting for. I mean, that's just as important as the physical assistance sometimes that, we're seeing. One of the things I've been really fascinated about, Beka, is, you clearly had experience, before Ukrainian armed forces. I mean, have you seen differences in how the US military does things and the Ukrainian military does things? And where have each side got areas they can learn from each other?
Oh, absolutely. And I will put a caveat. So my military experience was working as a civilian contractor in a Veterans Affairs hospital, working a lot with the veterans, having family members um, involved in the military. But I myself had not been a service member. So I would let my sister speak to this issue. She's with me. And she's in the military and has some pretty good insight.
Hey, Beck, this is Grace.
Hi, Grace. What a nice surprise.
Yeah, I'm just here with Beka. So the main differences I've noticed between, I guess, NATO in general, especially my experience in the U.S. Army and the Ukrainian Army, is they're working with a lot less resources. So let's say a training range, the polygon, right? You're having, it's run, you have a ton of staff, you've got range control, range operations, all kinds of measures. That range will not run. That polygon will not operate without a certain level of personnel. And so, seeing Rebecca basically run a polygon was astounding to me. Creating SOPs, filling in, and just basically doing the work of like a company, an entire company that's running a range at the very minimum. But it's just so they're innovative. The Ukrainian army is so innovative, and what they don't have, they find. And that's a huge thing. I've seen such motivation with the troops there that is just so inspiring. And they're defending their homeland, and there's just a drive and a determination and a resiliency that I kind of I don't quite see the same in the American military. But I don't know if that answers your question. If you have more specific questions about the differences.
I'm very interested. I mean, we saw, I served in a few different places, including Iraq and Afghanistan, and we saw over time a lot of changes in combat medicine, not just things like golden hour, but different techniques. Certainly, the basic training to every soldier on first aid and stuff evolved. We saw a lot of research into how to survive traumatic amputations through IEDs and how to, that first intervention, how to keep people alive in a way that we haven't had to do for decades. I mean, have we seen similar innovation from the Ukrainian armed forces in an environment where we lot more artillery, a lot more drones that have lethal capability, a whole range of things that we never faced in Iraq and Afghanistan? Have we seen those kind of developments from the Ukrainian military in combat medicine that we should be watching and learning from in other Western military institutions?
Oh, absolutely. This is Beck again. I am actually incredibly fearful for other countries were they to enter into a conflict like this, because I know for certain that their uh, readiness for like tactical medicine situations is, if they were to fight like near peer like Russia, would not be up to par, because they're still kind of following the guidelines from GWT and thinking like the majority of wounds are this or that. Um, I think they would do very well to just spend the day with even one Ukrainian medic and find out what a typical uh, day of evacuation look like. How many wounded are actually expected to be coming in? Which like the overall number is classified, but what even like the typical wound, what are people dying from the most? what is the evacuation wait time? What equipment is available to evacuate the soldiers? What medical equipment does each soldier have even issued to him? And also, they could do well to learn from the intense need of replacing that medical equipment, because it's a war of consumables. And if you're injured, you're going to use your tourniquets. Then you're going to need new tourniquets. Let's say you can come back, or you're going to need more for the next guy. If you use a stretcher, and you're under heavy combat fire, that stretcher just stays where it's at when you get that patraxothy, or like the wounded, um, into the vehicle. I really think, and a lot is with the drone warfare. So what could be a simple evacuation in America is completely different here. The time that they're going to be on the position, the time that they're going to wait for evacuation, the complexity of the wounds. Like, every wound now is more polytrauma, especially since we've got the FPVs and the dropped munitions. This isn't just a simple, like, 762, or like even an IED. This can be someone that's been hit by multiple FPVs. Um, their position has already blown up like 3 times. They've had 3 concussions before they get to the traumatic amputation, right? And because of the splintering effect that happens when ammunition is dropped, they could probably also have a pneumothorax. So you're looking at someone they could have a skull fracture, they could be missing an eye, they could now be deaf. Every patient you have is going to be a lot more complexly wounded, and everyone around them is also typically wounded because of the amount of barrage of artillery and FPVs that's coming down on them. So it's not like, this week we had a wounded guy. It's okay, today we had, let's just throw this out there, 30 wounded, 14 of which were severe because they were, on these 2 positions that got hit the most. And guess what? We only have 1 evacuation vehicle that's working. And because it's unarmored, we're not able to drive it up to the position. So they're having to carry them out on foot, sometimes 3 kilometers, or they're surrounded. And so they're having to stay in the position. And you hope that the soldiers have enough basic tactical medicine experience and a little bit of extended field care knowledge to keep them alive until you can evacuate them. I mean, it can be days. There is no golden hour.
No, I've seen that evolution over the course of the war. That the golden hour was lovely if you could manage it in Iraq and Afghanistan, but it seems to be one of those things that's just not possible in the kind of wars that we're facing now and in the future. I guess one thing, notwithstanding the fact that you are extraordinarily busy, I hope you're able to have the opportunity to kind of write these kind of things down and share them, through publication or other areas, because the kind of knowledge you have, we need to desperately share and bring into the doctrine and the training and the everyday operations of Western military organizations.
I absolutely am constantly keeping count of these things and watching, because even the tactical medicine that I was teaching in the beginning and the mechanism of injury that I was seeing in the beginning has evolved drastically, and it is evolving every single day as the Russians become more innovative with their um uh, the different mines they're coming, the improvised mines they're dropping, um the amount of drones that are coming over, we're adapting to the change. But I haven't even really had, I think, another country or anything reach out to me in terms of like wanting this information. And when I spoke to my Ukrainian soldiers that had gone overseas for some training, their experience was that they were taught very cut and dry, like your TCCC, your March protocol. And when they tried to explain some of their experiences, it was like, oh no, that's not how we do it. And so I'm hoping that in the future there can be an open conversation, because I think the Ukrainians have a lot to share. I was contacted by one British service member who had found my profile, and he said, Becca, listen, I'm teaching some um, medical stuff to a group of Ukrainians that have just gotten here. Like, what would you recommend in terms of like updating TCCC? And I was so tickled that I every single day for like 3 days, I called him and I said, okay, let me just tell you something you can think about adding to train. Planning for delayed evacuations, planning for the use of gas. What are you doing? Talking about having vehicles that will definitely be going over mines. And do you have extra tires for that? Because you're going to take some loose tires. Talking about communications, because communications is so limited here. And that was one person. That's one person that's ever even asked, that's been in another country trying to train, and was super thankful.
I'm
Yeah.
asking, and I know some people, and we might talk offline on this because I think it's one, inspiring you have this and are willing to share it, but heartbreaking that our institutions are so arrogant to think we don't have anything to learn.
Such is the name of the game.
Okay. Well, we might talk
Uh,
about that offline because I
Okay.
know some people who would be deeply interested in what you got to say here at, combat health battalions and these kind of organisations. So that'd be amazing.
So, speaking of ability to learn, a couple of days, and I don't know if you both saw this, Chris Owicki did a fascinating thread on a particular choke point that the Russians have, which is basically their battalion resupply officers and how reliant they are on them, and the incredible levels of paperwork they face. For instance, if they have to replace just one single combat medic aid kit, right? So if they lose 200 in a shelling, that's like almost potentially up to 600 pieces of paper with individual signatures on each one, right? So, someone like me looks at something like that and says, well, how do you fix that? What you do is you go into a large scale, enterprise level digital transformation thing. But you can't really do that in wartime because they're fraught with risk and cost and all sorts of problems around them as well. So it just seems to me the Russians are just constantly shooting themselves in the foot with these idiotic systems that they have in place. How does that compare with Ukraine?
Is that a question for me? Because I can't answer.
No, yeah, if you can't answer, no problem at all. But I'm just fascinated about it from the Russian point of view, right? So just to give you my background, I did Russian history at uni, wound up working in Moscow in the 1990s. So I have kind of views on what Russia's capable of and not capable of. And I looked at the Russian military going into this operation, and I viewed it as being 100% fit for purpose, in that the purpose was a mafia state's clientelist army whose sole purpose was to provide villas in Saint-Tropez for people like Timur Ivanov, right? So you see the purges in the defense ministry going on at the moment. And obviously Putin's woken up to that particular problem. So he's got trained economists in charge instead of Shoigu, but you can't fix something. And I'm using as an example, this problem of battalion resupply as being a symptom of this in the middle of a war. I just don't see the Russians pulling off being able to adapt to the same level as the Ukrainians. And I'm curious, Mick, how you view this.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've looked at and written about a lot. Clearly Ukraine's bottom-up adaptation is better than Russia's. I mean, there's a very effective grassroots approach to learning, adapting, absorbing new ideas, new technologies. The Russians are nowhere near as good at that. However, when the Russians do learn something, finally, when they copy the Ukrainians or learn it in another way, they have a very effective system for industrializing it because they have a very big defense industry compared to Ukraine's. And we've seen that with coke cages, with drones. I mean, they are fast followers. And that we've seen it tactically, where they've adopted tactics that have caused a lot of problems for the Ukrainians. Now, they're not the tactics we would use, their meat tactics, where they basically just throw thousands of prisoners and people at a problem and don't care if they lose them. But it still causes problems for Ukraine, because Ukraine actually values every single individual in its military in a way that the Russians don't. So, the Russians are not stupid. And remember, wars aren't about being excellent. It's about being just a little bit better than the other side. And sometimes that means if you're just a bit bigger and have a bit more ammunition, as the Russians have done in the eastern parts of Ukraine, you can make progress, albeit at great costs. So we need to be very careful about writing off the Russians, because too many people did that in the first 6 months of the war, and look where we're at the moment. We need to be very prudent in how we see the Russians. We have to see them as an enemy that's thinking and learning, albeit in a very brutal and war crimes laden way. But they are not beaten. They are a society that's happy to waste hundreds of thousands of lives on this, to produce weapons and bring in weapons from North Korea and from Iran. They don't have any morals about that. So we need to structure our strategy to beat them at that game. And at the moment, I don't see that from the West, unfortunately. Ukraine knows the Russians well. Unfortunately, NATO and the United States have forgotten what they're like and what they're capable of.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for answering those questions. We got a few hands now, so I just want to go to the Will, then Peter, and then Karen. Will.
Yeah, and then my question for Mick, and then I'll shut up and let other people have a go. Mick, how has your book been received on adaptation in Ukraine since it's come out? And I see one of the particular problems I've talked about in relation to adaptation here. Basically what you said, which is Ukraine has a very good way of bottom-up adaptation. But one of the big problems that I see that they've got is once they have an adaptation done and it generates an opening for them, they're not capable of exploiting those advantages they generate through adaptation, because they don't have, what Rebecca said, enough of the boring. I continually talk about the boring going to be what wins this war. More 155 millimeter ammunition, more 777 howitzers, more Bradleys, more all the stuff that's in storage, mostly just in the deserts of America. Do you see any way around Ukraine? Do you see any way of Ukraine winning this war without somebody finally cracking open the storage areas in America and breaking free the boring things that they need, like 1,000 more Bradley M2 ODSs and Strikers and things that, frankly, America won't miss because it's just Army surplus they have no intention of using again? Do you see a way around that other than America finally waking up to that fact?
America's industrial capacity is clearly going to be a large part of that. Although Ukraine and Europe are starting to build a significant industrial capability, the boring matters, as Beka said. Everything from 155 to basic medical supplies. You need to just keep that coming. Don't count it. Just keep it coming, because it's all going to be used. There's no such thing as too much ammunition in a war. There's no such thing as too many basic supplies, whether it's medical supplies or body armor. Just keep building, keep sending it. But that's not the only thing. I think the other thing we need to look at is training. I think that Ukraine has had to make some very tough choices around how much training soldiers get, and sometimes how it selects those who lead them. There are some very fine leaders in the Ukrainian armed forces, but unfortunately there has been some not so fine leaders as well. So I think the training and leadership selection also need attention in an army that is still suffering a lot of casualties. And we need to ensure that Ukrainian soldiers are given the best possible training, as well as much equipment as possible, but also that they're well led across the board.
Thanks a lot, Mick. And just before we go to Peter and Karen, Rebecca, I'm going to be asking you how we can support you as individuals, fundraising and stuff like that, in a bit after Peter and Karen's question. So think of something to say. Peter.
Yeah, good morning. And just firstly to Rebecca, I think you're an amazing person. You make us feel incredibly humble. It's really touched me with what you've been saying. And I don't know how you managed to keep your mind together dealing with all that sort of thing. I mean, my history is aviation, but it's just civilian aviation, not military. But at the moment, I feel totally ashamed of the West. I'll say the West. Because, yes, there are thousands of Ukrainians who have died. These poor people have given their lives. And remember, they have families as well. They have wives and children. I know one particularly well who has been in the war almost from when Russia invaded. Very experienced soldier. He was wounded probably about 2 months ago through missile attacks, and he was off for a month and has gone back. But he's not the same person. He's not the same person that I knew a couple of years ago. And it's our fault. It's the West's fault. I mean, one thing from aviation, I know for a fact that in modern warfare there has not been an army that has fought a war without air cover. We haven't given it. With Mariupol was destroyed to a pile of rubble, they shouted for air cover. We didn't give it. And I think the West really need to wake up and look at what they are going to do if they don't support Ukraine, because it's going to turn around and bite them big time. Straight off, they need to be able to strike the launch places for missiles, which are just being somebody pressing a button and the missile goes in and hits these troops. Though they must be able to hit those before they do anything else. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, but just to say kind of how humbling your talk has been, and we should all be ashamed that these people are suffering like they are. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Peter. Karen?
Yes. Good evening to you. Well, actually, it's early morning here in Anchorage, Alaska. It's 12:58 a.m. My question is the Georgian Dream Party comes out on top in their parliamentary elections on the 26th of October. And they still have a hold on their country's parliament. How do you see this affecting Ukraine, and how do you see in general Georgia affecting Ukraine? Thank you.
That question to either Mick or Rebecca.
I'm not an expert on Georgia, but I do know quite a bit about Russian subversion and its influence operations to support political parties that align with Russia's aspirations to re-establish some kind of Russian empire. If Russia's successful in ensuring a political party has influence in Georgia, that will encourage it to continue similar kinds of operations throughout Europe, the Baltics, Scandinavia. But remember, the Chinese are also watching this, and political subversion and influence operations in countries, including the US and Australia, are a SOP for the Chinese at the moment, and we should be pushing back on this wherever it happens, not just our own countries, but in every country. We shouldn't be giving them easy wins. We should be making it as hard as possible as we can for them. And every time they have a success by subverting the political system of democracies, by ensuring people don't trust their democratic systems, President Xi and President Putin think that is fantastic. We should not be allowing them to do that in Georgia or elsewhere.
Thanks very much. Rebecca, how can we help you raise funds? What's the method to help you get stuff for your guys in Ukraine? I can see on your profile you got PayPal. Would you explain how we can do that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I want to premise this by circling around to a question statement that was posed earlier about Russia actually and their lack of battalion supply refilling because of all of the paperwork and how they're shooting themselves in the foot. And I want to be clear that we also face the same thing in the Ukrainian military. So, for instance, there are still a lot of those kind of old school policies in terms of paperwork and reports for lost equipment. One thing that I've personally seen the Russians do to circumvent this is a lot of fundraising on their own and volunteering and volunteers replacing the kit and the equipment that the soldiers use up and may be waiting months on the paperwork to catch up with. And Ukraine does a lot the same. I do a lot the same. So I'll give you just a concrete example. When we're in active battle and pieces of equipment get hit, such as like communication systems, Starlinks, eco flows, right? Generators. A week and a half ago, a commander came to me and his his command post had been hit. And they, of course, are continuing this is an active battle. So they can't go to like the headquarters in the rear and say, I'm so sorry, sir, we need this stuff right now. We can't do the paperwork about it because this is a war and this headquarters is getting requests like this all of the time, every single day. So what do? They call me and they say, Beka, the KSB is hit. Do you have extra EcoFlow? Do you have an extra Starlink? And thanks to the support of you guys, and especially people like Philip, who's keeping me in, who's sending me Starlinks and EcoFlows, I'm able to lend one out to them so they can continue combat operations until the paperwork and everything can catch up. And the same thing with medical supplies. What's happening is like there's huge gaps in the system because the medical supplies are getting used far more quickly than coming in because it's active war. And I think that's one thing people don't understand is this is a war of consumables, and every piece of equipment that comes, every IFAC, every tourniquet, every even like magazine you can lose. You have to wait for this to get refilled, and in a wartime, you can't go and fill out a bunch of paperwork and immediately get a new one. You go back to battle and you hope you can find one with a volunteer or a friend, and you come to me essentially. And so all of the fundraising that I do is immediately turned over into resupplying the guys. And so, for instance, for tactical medicine equipment, when that runs out, I have found in country a wonderful man named Anton, and he supplies quality like combat tested tactical medical gear, even like medical rucksacks and stretchers like that. And he uses Novus Posta system. So I can receive a donation. And this has happened so many times. I say, okay, I know I need 5 soft stretchers for this battalion and this company because they don't have any more stretchers left. Immediately, somebody sends $60. Cool. I just brought a very strong stretcher, and that is posted and arrives in 2 days. I send out a runner to the Novus Posta. They bring it in. We take it immediately, and it's immediately loaded into the ambulance and goes to work. And for this, I was using Buy Me a Coffee a lot. There's a lot of I think tax fees. I've learned that they take like 20% or something. I guess you have to look that up specifically. They have a little bit of a profit there, and so PayPal is one way that I accept. And then also, like in country directly, some people are, obviously and should be cautious about money. Um, my friend Philip Reese has set up a system where donors can actually just send money directly to the tactical medical store, say we need tactical medical supplies, and then it adds to the account. And then I can say, hey, how much do I got? Okay, perfect. I'm going to need 6 medic backpacks. And that comes in. And yeah, the PayPal and stuff like that, I use that so much for the infrastructure needs. Something so simple as like a portable phone bank or a battery operated light. These things are so important to the soldiers because it's not like we can just run off to the shop and go get a new headlamp. The shops are closed. The shops are bombed. And if you order one, you're going to need to have Wi-Fi and stuff to go online and make the purchase. If I have some on hand, this happens constantly. Hey, Beka, the boys are going out tonight. Do you have any headlamps? Do we have this? Do we have that? And so it's not just like medical stuff at this point, which I love the medical side of things, but it's also understanding that in order to run a good evacuation point and for people to stay alive, you need communications, you need power sources, and a thousand other things.
We got Philip up now. Philip.
Hello, Beka. So next
Hi.
time I send a package, I'm going to add some more headlamps in that case. So we have a group of Swiss fellas that are supporting Beka heavily, and we actually use the send a lot of money to to Anton's tactical medical store, so she can order there. Obviously, for people outside of Switzerland, it's the best if they donate directly to Beka via her PayPal, which you will find in her profile, and you can donate there. And if anybody in German-speaking Europe, or maybe even the eastern part of France, wants to send Beka something in larger quantities, she will take anything from food. I have learned that I have to feed her to echo flows, etc. I have a relatively good shipping solution to get supplies to her, and that has worked out wonderfully. So anybody want to deliver goods, just give me a DM and I will look what we can arrange.
But I don't want anybody to think I'm starving. The army does have food. Philip has been wonderful. The army does have food, but what we always need is compact food that doesn't have to be refrigerated, right? Because we don't have the electricity or the refrigerator systems, and so he sends a lot of stuff like protein bars, snack bars, small items that we can actually distribute to the soldiers that are on the position. They can put them in their backpack and say they're going out on a mission. They're going to be there for a long time. If we can't like physically bring them stuff, any food and water, it's dropped by a drone. And the Ukrainian military loves their canned goods. They love to eat the canned goods, and that is actually super heavy for the drones to carry in. But a pack of protein bars is a lot lighter for those drones to drop into the guys. So you'd be surprised what a little bit of packaged, preserved food means for our boys.
And Beka, it was Grace that told me you're not eating enough, so that's why.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks,
Oh,
Grace.
seriously. You're it's not just her, Philip. It's her and the soldiers, everyone in the house. When we get a package from you for the soldiers, know they can take the quick, easy eats to the position. It's keeping everybody alive. When the shops are closed because of curfew, when the shops are bombed, we can't get groceries. Those little packages mean the
Everything,
world.
yeah.
It's like Christmas Day, and I know you know that.
Thanks a lot. Mick, would you like to make any points on the fundraiser side of things for Rebecca?
No, I just encourage everyone to, Beka spells it out really well on her Twitter handle about how you can donate. There's a very detailed explanation there of how you can provide monies, particularly to buy tactical medicine, but the PayPal I've found pretty easy to use and a good way to just provide cash. So Beka and Philip can buy what's actually needed at that point in time. So, Beka and many others really rely on this kind of crowdfunding. In fact, it's been one of those great innovations of this war, of how Ukrainians have been able to use crowdfunding to buy everything from bullets to medical supplies to satellites. And if you can support Rebecca any way whatsoever, please consider doing so. I know I do, and I know there's many others that do it well as well.
Thanks a lot, Mick. Go to Surf Fella now for a question. Surf Fella.
Morning, guys. Mick, thank you very much for coming on, and particularly Beka. Sorry, I've got one of the huskies wooing in the background. They want to say thanks to. Beka, I was just interested because I do a lot of first aid training. I work as a lifeguard trainer, training up our beach lifeguards here in the UK, and I'm always fascinated with kind of the outdoor medicine, if you like, and nowhere near the levels of the stuff you're doing in combat medicine. But what's the kind of the big lessons or the big kind of learning points or things that surprised you with the medicine you're doing, the combat medicine? I know you're saying about the golden hour, which doesn't exist on a battlefield in this realm. I'm just gobsmacked that people can survive with catastrophic injuries for multiple days before evacuation. Has there been any kind of medical stuff or sort of from the first aid front stuff that's really surprised you, sort of lessons that you've kind of learned, stuff that we could pass on to the people we're working with when we're doing first aid training here, back in the UK?
Yeah, sure. And Mick, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hijack this.
You are not hijacking this. I'd rather be listening to you.
I would say one of the biggest things, the takeaways, is the need to think outside the box and improvise and adapt, because you're not always going to have the resources or the time or the people. So the very basics is most important, and that is training every single serviceman in the basics of tactical medicine, because you will not have a medic at every position. There's not even enough medics for this. So ensuring that every soldier knows how to save his own life, his buddy's life. They've practiced this, right? Because theoretical knowledge is nothing, because when the bullets are flying, adrenaline's going, and you're putting a tourniquet on and you've never even opened your IFAC, this is catastrophic. So we start with the very basics, and that is trying to train every single soldier exactly what to do in the event he's injured, someone else is injured. Everything from like communication, like what are you doing in the red zone, right? What's teaching them how to call for help on their radio. This is something very simple. Teaching them to calm down the guy next to them. Teaching them to identify the most severely wounded and help them first, even if it's chaotic. And then, of course, giving them equipment to help each other and help themselves, which is the first aid kits and the tourniquets. And then improvisation. I had a group of soldiers that were, well, I don't want to be too specific. They were surrounded for over 2 weeks. And during that time, numerous ones of them were wounded. And they survived
thanks to their memory from some of the lessons they had learned, their improvisation, and their just fortitude. So one guy had the least injured took care of the more injured, and with what little things they had, like they tended each other's wounds, they shared what little water they had, and they remained alive. Um, and they did a lot of um, the basics, going over the basics before they went to the position, practicing the basics over and over, also thinking about different ways to improvise, and then having in that position this spirit of helping each other. That's what really kept them alive. Um, so let's see, I've kind of went off rail there, but no, essentially plan for there not to be a medical professional around. Train as if you will be the medical professional. And this is what I tell my soldiers every single time I train them. I said, the best medics I've ever had are simple soldiers, infantry, tankistas, artillerymen who are motivated to learn, who listen carefully, and when the time arises, they don't panic and they get the job done. If you look around and you don't see a medic, you are the medic. If you look around and the scene is in chaos and there's no commander, you need to be a small commander and control everything. Call to the guys, gain attention, because in that moment of panic and chaos, when you're waiting for someone else to come and save you, maybe you can be saving yourself and everyone else too. And the guys remember this. And this happens 1,000 times where they look around, there's not a medic, and then they'll come to me, Beka, I saved this boy, I saved that boy. I did this, I did that. And they're so proud because this is something they did. They're not professional trained doctors, but they paid attention. They're motivated to help each other. They improvised and they repeated the basics over and over until they became like muscle memory.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing. I've had some of the guys that I've trained, and I love it when they've done their first rescue and they come to me or they message me and they say, "Did my first rescue today? Did my first save?" Yeah, it makes you proud, doesn't it? It's a proud parent moment almost when that happens. I just astounded by the work you're doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, and the thing with the protein bars, that's so simple, isn't it? You know, for us guys to bung an extra couple of boxes in our shopping when we go and do our weekly shop, and then if we can get it out there, then every little helps, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you instead of buying maybe the boxes in the UK, just send Rebecca the money to her PayPal, and then she can buy them locally. I think, Rebecca, those protein boxes and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. And I also thankfully have Novus Posta. So say I can't buy it in my town because my village, magazine, what means a store, is shuttered, destroyed, or in curfew times. I can always, at this point, still thankfully in Donetsk Oblast, use Novus Posta. So order from another oblast and have it delivered the next day, which is super, super cool.
Rebecca, is there somewhere where you can do that online? Can we sort of go online and almost like we do here in the UK? We want something we can Amazon. It comes the next day, kind of thing. Could you put a link up to somewhere where we could just I've got a few spare quid. I'm just gonna order some stuff and get it sent to you. Have you got like a wish list or account that we could add stuff to, and then you can just get it delivered?
I don't have. I can work on that. So here's the thing. I used to do a lot of orders from Epicenter, which is like basically your big Walmart. Unfortunately, as the Russians move closer and closer, Epicenter doesn't deliver now to my areas that are so highly contested. But this is something I'll have to work out. At this point, like a concrete example is I have a gal friend in Kyiv who sometimes can order stuff from me. I send her the PayPal. If I get a PayPal, I'll send it and I'll say, Katerina, I'm going to need like 70 bandages this size and this size. Just for simple wounds. I'm going to need this, this, and this. And she goes and gets it at the store and she sends it to me by Novus Posta. So now it's just kind of a network of people, right? Like as Philip said, it's a network of people.
But because of the nature of the war, like having a wish list with things, I don't know the next day if the market will be there. I don't know if the big sender of items that I've been using before will still send it. Because as the more territory is taken, the the less infrastructure works. In short.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Maybe Philip can speak to this as well, Philip.
Well, to the destroyed infrastructure, that's obviously terribly tragic. The number of Nova Postas that have been destroyed where I was shipping through to Beka. But I wanted to say something else, Beka, and I'm addressing Grace in the background. You do have a wish list. Maybe you want to post that sooner or later, because there is an Amazon wish list for you. And I would let people know.
Yes, good and Grace. I just talked about that. We're working on an Amazon list wish of things that can be sent to my sister in the US and then sent. And this will be more things that are needed all the time universally and not so much urgent supplies. As we know, like time is of the essence. So that's something that we're working through, and we're putting on that list things that are chronically running out and then re-needed.
Okay. All right. Brilliant. Mick, any other question for Rebecca? I kind of like you two chatting to each other.
No, I mean, I just think that, when I look at the role of combat medics, it's kind of a story of a whole range of supporting services in brigades that often don't get the attention they should, whether it's the combat medics, whether it's the logisticians, whether it's engineers or sometimes even drone operators. I mean, Rebecca, how do you work with those other elements that support battalion and brigade operations? They may not be infantry or tank or artillery soldiers, but there's a bunch of other soldiers who are constantly working really, really hard, like you do, to keep those frontline soldiers doing what they do. How do you work with those others in a brigade that aren't just involved with combat medicine?
We work together as a team. Really, it is such teamwork, and we have to. So it's not just like, oh, there's the medic point, and then there's the logistics point, the comms point. We are all constantly working together because we have to. So, for instance, me working consistently, almost daily, with the electronic warfare team. Why? Because they're providing me the data with what frequencies the drones are flying most on. We're talking about the newest anti-drone technology that we need. We're seeing which ones are most effective when we do get it in. I'm talking every day to like the engineers about what routes are safe. Hey, this bridge was blown. What other bridge can we use? I'm talking to the positions of the grenade launchers because they provide a lot of covering fire. I talk to the communication guys because we need radios, and we also have to come in and get our radios re-encrypted. I'm talking to the instructors, thinking about when we're going to get new soldiers, what they need. I'm talking to even the command points, because a lot of times when we're getting evacuation requests, we're communicating directly with the command points. And so everyone works together as a team, because if we don't, uh, it's all going to fall apart. Logistics runs the show, and logistics is nothing if you're not coordinating with each other. And we're trying to help each other with the logistics too. So if one person has an extra radio, doesn't matter if you're a mortar man or a drone operator, but you need that radio, you're going to share. And always talking with the drone boys too, because they're doing reconnaissance before and after missions, their eyes in the sky. And yeah, it all works together, and I am happy to support their units as well with if I have something extra, because they're helping keep me alive, and I want to help keep them alive. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh no, it's a great answer. That's my experience of brigade operations and operations. There's a teamwork, particularly on operations, that you may not always in barracks or in peacetime, but everyone kind of realises they're in it together, and things that might not be shared in peacetime become common goods in wartime, because everyone's valuable, everyone matters, and working together means more people come home.
100%.
Well, it occurs to me that, Rebecca, you haven't asked me any questions. You may not have any, but if you did, now might be a good time. Hate to put you on the spot.
I'm just mostly wondering if there's. I would love to pick your brain sometime. I don't know if Twitter is the right place to do it. But what are your thoughts? You have actually, in my opinion, a very realistic view of this entire conflict and the adequacies and inadequacies of both sides. And I liked what you said earlier when you said, do not underestimate Russia, because I feel like this is such an important, this is so crucial to let people know this, because when we underestimate the enemy, they tend to overwhelm us. And I don't know how, but I feel like you are, if there's someone that can talk to people and kind of bridge that gap between, like, I'm more like on the medical side and logistics side, bridge the gap between speaking about the needs, but also remembering to ground people in reality so that aid can be delivered. I think you're the absolute perfect person for this.
I try. It's hard at times, but for me, it's important to be able to influence, people not just in government but beyond government, to understand the stakes of this war, the requirements of Ukraine, and the threat posed by Russia. The incompetent execution we saw in the first few months of this war is very different to the Russia we're seeing now. And there's a whole lot of other elements of what Russia's doing that I think needs far more light shone upon it. The death of a Ukrainian journalist in Russian captivity today highlights once again how awful Russia is in the treatment of prisoners of war, both immediately after capture but also in captivity, about people in occupied areas, about kidnapping children. Just about every element of how Russia operates is awful, brutal, dark ages kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean we can't take them seriously as a force that poses a danger to us, and somehow we have to balance that. I think, as you see on a day-to-day basis, they're an extraordinarily dangerous and brutal organisation, and we need to commit more to beating them. And I'll keep working on that until the job's done, and no matter how long that takes. And I work with, the Ukrainian ambassador in Australia. I work with government. I work with corporations, and I continue to work with my own army and share lessons with them. So my view is I do every little bit that I can do to help Ukraine win. And like I said with my book, I'm not accepting a single cent of royalties from it, because I want to be able to give as much as I possibly can to Ukraine's efforts to beat Russia. So if you buy my book, just remember, I'm not getting a cent. Every cent I get will be going to crowdfunders and charities, and to people like Rebecca who need that support. So that's kind of my motivation, and that's why I do it. I think this is important.
Mick, can you? I love that you brought up the book, because that was going to be my next question. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and why it's so important for people to read it, to understand it, in order to understand the conflict overall?
Yeah, so the book called War for Ukraine was published in August. It's not a chronology of the war. There's others who have done excellent jobs on it. Ilya Ponomarenko's book, Chris Miller's book, and others have really done terrific jobs. What I've focused on is looking at the strategy of the war, how countries have thought about and fought the war: Ukraine, Russia, the US, and NATO, but also how Russia and Ukraine have learned and adapted at different levels in the war. And I think it's important to understand that, because if you can learn the best ways of doing that, to speed up how you can learn, how you can share lessons across battalions, brigades within an organisation, you can generate an advantage. That's really important. But I think one of the most important things I look at in there is the need for good leadership, whether it's good national leadership or good squad leaders, platoon leaders, battalion and brigade leaders. This is not a discretionary thing in a military institution, especially in war. Good leaders make a profound difference on the battlefield. And therefore we need to turn our attention to, well, what does a good leader look like in the 21st century, and how do we give ourselves the best possible chance of producing, selecting and producing these good leaders. So hopefully the book contributes a little bit to that, and hopefully it prepares other military organisations, not just for squaring off against Russia, but against countries like China in the Pacific region, as many of us are also focused on at the moment. So hopefully it helps with that, and I hope you and Grace get some downtime to read it, although I understand you may not always want to be reading about the war, but hopefully at some point you'll get to read it.
Well, I have to confess that I went ahead and impulsively just got it on Kindle because I don't want to wait for the hard copy. So guys, listen, if I can find the time to read this, I think that you can and should as well. Because Mick is someone that understands war as a whole, as an institution, and also has such remarkable insights into what's going on in Ukraine, into the ways in which these two countries have adapted. And I think it would do people very well to read his analysis, to read and understand from someone who's an expert in this.
Thanks, Beka. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. I need to head off in a couple of minutes, but I've really appreciated this, and the highlight of my month has been able to talk to Beka. To be quite honest, it's a real joy, and I'm very humbled by the fact that I've been able to ask you a few questions and get some insights in your daily life and how you're helping Ukrainian soldiers, how you and Grace are supporting the war effort. It's just been amazing that you've got the time whilst you're taking a very short break to spend with us. So thank you, but both from me, but I'm sure on behalf of everyone here, it's just been a tremendous opportunity, and I hope we get the chance to talk again, and hopefully in my next visit to Ukraine I can come and see you.
Oh, we would love that. And I think my soldiers would be so tickled too. Oh, we would be so happy. It has been so awesome to speak to you. Thank you for all your support for Ukraine. And thank you for everything.
Yep. Thanks very much, Mick, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been one of my dreams to get you and Rebecca up on a panel together so you can chat together. I know you mutually respect and support each other. So job done from my point of view. So thanks, Mick. Any final words before you have to go, Mick?
I thank you for getting me on the program. It's a real joy to be able to have these kind of conversations. I really like this format. It's great. I have a face for radio, so thank you for allowing me to do that. I'd also just like to mention Philip, who is really important on the support team for Rebecca. Does an amazing job with a lot of logistics and other elements of supporting Rebecca and what she's doing, and people like Philip, who may not be on the front lines like Rebecca, but are absolutely essential to providing the logistics support and moral support that's really required by Rebecca and many others who are involved in this war. So thank you to Philip, and once again thank you to the team at Volya Radio for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mick. Will, any questions for Rebecca?
Well, no. I'd just also like to thank Mick, and it is great to have you on for such an extensive period of time today, Mick. And anytime you want to come back about and talk anything you want to talk about, we're more than happy to host you, believe me. And Rebecca, thank you so much. I never got to speak to you before. Very interesting, all of the background you present on doing the training. And I hope, well, I'm going to look into this more myself. The expansion of combat training for all medics and basically all personnel to get them to the standard you talked about would be a real key if we could do that. I found that very interesting from your discussion, and if there's ever anything we can do to help you achieve your goals in Ukraine, we'd also be very interested in talking to you at any time.
Yeah, either of you are welcome at any time, and we'll even fire a space up if it's not in our usual current time slots. So yeah, thank you very much, Mick, for coming. Very much appreciated, and always love listening to you. My favourite general, basically, and Rebecca as well. We haven't got any. I know Mick said you have to go. We haven't got a hard stop on our space today, so we're going to be keeping it open and taking questions. So if anybody has any questions for Rebecca, just request a speaker. And Rebecca, anything you'd like to add, or any topics you'd like to cover that we haven't covered yet?
I really like questions. I know last time I was on a space, it was a little bit, I was kind of waiting, and I think some people were a little bit nervous to raise hands or something like that, which is totally understandable. But there's no such thing as a stupid question. And it also makes me feel happy because I love to speak about Ukraine, and it's not something I get to do often to many people because I'm with the Ukrainians working. So when I get a chance to talk about Ukrainians and what's happening there and my Ukrainian soldiers, it's really good for me. It's really good for me. I've kind of just got this inside me, and I'm just ready to share.
All right, brilliant. I mean, speaking for myself and maybe other people as well, we're just kind of in awe of you, Rebecca. I know that makes you feel a little bit funny, but we kind of lose our questions and go all wobbly tongued when you're on, and Mick as well. So some of the questions we ask may be a bit dumb, especially from me. So yeah, so Grace, if Grace is there as well, Grace, if you've got anything you want to say that you want to tell our audience, which you feel is important, that's also good as well. Ming, until then, have you got any final questions? Well, maybe not final questions, but any additional questions
No,
for
well,
Rebecca?
I must apologise. I'm with Mick on this. I need to run as well, but I just wanted to thank all three profoundly this morning. So Mick, Rebecca, and indeed Grace. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Guys.
So Rebecca, I know you're on R&R at the moment, and you're heading back. I mean, what I'd like for it to happen when you get back is for you to have lots of funds in your PayPal account, so you can, as I guess when you get back, you're going to find out there's lots of things you need. So yeah, I just want to highlight to people to try and help Rebecca fundraise for her guys, for the medical stuff and for the non-medical stuff as well. That's all very, very important. So please go to Rebecca's timeline, and in her profile is her PayPal account, and be generous. It is helping save lives. So that's all very important. Rebecca, going into autumn, you've been in country now for a couple of years, so you know kind of, maybe you can explain kind of what happens on the front line going in from summer through to autumn and the mud season, and the challenges in that.
Yeah, mud season, particularly in the Donetsk area. What happens essentially is that everything gets a little bit crappier. So for one, we start to lose our cover. All of the trees and the foliage disappear. So instantly, any safe place that we had before now is a target. We lose cover. and this can be really hard for the guys that are trying to make reconnaissance missions and whatnot, because there is nowhere for them to hide. A second, it gets icy cold, and something small like your hands freezing can impair your function. It can impair you with like trying to help somebody in a battlefield. It can impair shooting for the shooters. A lot of the equipment starts to malfunction as well, and this is actually something that we've seen with Western aid. Some of them are not made for the harsh environment of the war. And although we are so grateful for the Western aid, sometimes we've had to make some modifications, kind of baby the Western equipment, because it is it can freeze up when it's too cold. You got the mud. You have a lot of infrastructure problems already, and now one more task that you've got to do is keep your guys warm. And this can be extremely hard when you can't even light a fire because the smoke will draw attention to your position. And you don't have electricity, so how are you going to plug an electric heater? So hot hands, heat warmer pads, very, very important. Insulated sleeping bags, can't stress that enough. Thermal underwear, so important. Wool socks, like the neck gaiters, gloves, all these things that you and I know I did for so long, took for granted. Like, I just pop down to Walmart, or I can just go to Target and pick up a neck warmer. Man, I'm cold, let me just grab a pair of gloves. When you're a soldier and you're stuck in a position, you can't nip down to the nearest market and grab some gloves. You need to have that beforehand, right? And some of this stuff, so say you are to be injured, and you have one winter uniform and that's cut off of you, because we need to look at your injuries. That's one less winter uniform you have. And because of the paperwork, like, obviously, like, it's going to take time for you to get a new one. So you're going to go out of your pocket to buy a new winter uniform, or new socks, new gloves, if you lose anything, until the paperwork comes by so that the government can give you another one, which is, again, something they're working on. And I saw a new law that's passing now, that the guys aren't having to pay for their own stuff if it's lost or damaged or, God forbid, shot off of them. But the replacement of these items is extremely hard. So I know, just for us, like, logistically and strategically, we keep a lot of our supply in the rear, right? Because you can't have it all up close to the front, because then it's all going to be destroyed. So let's say we're out of something, then we need to arrange transport, benzene, and your fuel stations, God knows, are closed. Basically plan a whole trip to go to somewhere a long distance from your current area of operations to get much needed supplies that you needed yesterday. One thing that some volunteers in country have helped me with is clean clothes. And so I've had to take off a lot of uniforms when the guys come in wounded. And I actually had a wonderful Ukrainian volunteer organization send me flip-flops, clean underwear, clean socks, and like sweats and t-shirts for the guys that are wounded, because they were coming in wounded and I was giving my t-shirts away. The medics were just kind of like, okay, we got something clean, let's give it to them. And I said that this isn't feasible. And so some wonderful volunteer organizations came and assisted me with that, and they are Ukrainian. But that's I don't know, I got derailed by that. The importance of stocking up on winter stuff. I can tell you for a fact, because this is they're equipping the masses, the Ukrainian military. They are getting issued winter stuff, but when is not clear, and for every unit it's a different time. And so it's not like the Army issues all of this winter stuff all at once, and like every single unit goes and gets this at one time. It's going to go depending on where you are, how close you are to the distribution point, which unit gets it first. There might be other brigades that get theirs first, so it's very haphazard. But I, at all times, one of the biggest things I did during tactical med training, when we were by Avdiivka, I would go before tactical med training and buy as many neck warmers as I could afford before every training session, because nobody had neck warmers. And these guys were absolutely freezing. That was just something small. It was relatively cheap, but it was such a morale booster. It'd be like, you did such a good job today in training. I know you're going to probably go to the trench tonight. Here's a neck warmer. You have to say thank you, good job, but also to let them know that they're cared about. Let's see. What am I missing? I don't know.
Don't know. Neck warmers, though, I do understand that, even though I'm not in the military. If my neck's warm, the rest of my body is okay. If my neck is cold,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of my body is not. So it's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Sir fella.
Socks. Surely socks. Remember last year we were fundraising for socks, weren't we? But socks, I think, is that a big thing, Beka?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Just a nice warm
Warm
pair of socks makes a world of
socks.
difference to morale.
Yeah. I can tell you, as like now officially of joining the military, I got issued stuff, right? So I went through the same process as our servicemen, and I got 4 pairs of socks. So if that tells you anything about the need for socks, like, it tells you there's a need for socks, warm socks. Gloves, so important. Gloves. When your hands are cold, you can't function. You can't do anything. Warm sleeping bags. So the sleeping bags are important too, because you think about sleeping bags, they're meant to keep you warm. But when you are sleeping underground or in a trench, you can't even light a fire because it draws the enemy's attention. You are so much colder than if you were just normally, like, even a camping trip outside sleeping, right? Because you're underground, you're in like a narrow place with dirt around you. There's no warming factor there. And so warm sleeping bags are super, super, super important. Yeah.
How do you, I mean, I've been camping, and when my sleeping bag got wet, that was a nightmare. So how do they keep their sleeping bags dry, especially in mud season, when they're in trenches and stuff?
They typically, like, will put them in garbage bags. That's all they really have. They'll take a big garbage bag and wrap it out the outside, because like a, waterproof liner that costs extra money, they may not have that. They'll put it on a trash bag. So
Okay, yeah, fair enough. That actually sounds like a very simple solution. Wish I'd thought about that when I was camping. I just want to welcome Joanna. Joanna, welcome to the co-host chair. Hopefully, you're all in there, and just pipe up when you want to. And anybody else who's got any questions for Rebecca, then request, and then I can bring you up to ask questions. Okay, right then. Oh, there we go. Balakan, would you like to ask a question, please?
Hi, thank you so much, Rebecca, for speaking to us. I was just curious, how much of what you need is off the shelf versus prescription, and is there a need to kind of connect with companies that can provide things versus individuals? Like, can you get most things off the shelf, or are there some things that are very hard to get?
in terms of medicine, or what?
Yeah, in terms of medicine, are there things that are off the, prescription only that are more difficult to get?
To a certain degree, but I would say, like your standard stuff. Um, let's say somebody comes in, they've got a concussion, something like that, and I need to give them ondansetron, which is something to help with nausea, because their head is spinning, their ears are ringing, and they're feeling nauseous. Ondansetron is a drug that I can buy in Ukrainian drugstores. Super cool. Dexamethasone, a steroid. I can buy that in Ukrainian drugstores. I have even been able to find TXA, which is tranexamic acid, which stops
Mm-hmm.
the bleeding. I can find
Bleeding.
those
Yeah.
in the drugstores. There's very few drugs that I use that require prescriptions. But I always like to have on hand for my soldiers, those who serve, like a lot of them have like chronically high blood pressure, and especially when they're in stress, I always like to have blood pressure medication on hand, um, inhalers for asthma. I can never get enough of like antibiotic cream, because a lot of the soldiers end up with shrapnel in their body that's not able to be removed for a number of reasons. And as it's healing, it gets crusty, it's pain. A lot of the wounds can get infected. Antibiotics I can buy. I prefer, and this is just me, I prefer the American antibiotic cream, and I'm I'm adjusting. I'll do the Ukrainian ones, but I just love my Neosporin. I like to see like the familiar sign of a good American antibiotic cream. There are some like stronger pain medication drugs that are given, but those I'm getting through like trusted licensed sources, because I also want to maintain my license. And so I'm very, very careful with how I procure those. And yeah, most things can be bought, yeah, absolutely, and ordered online. It's just, and I have a lot of people that mean very well, and they're like, "Hey, I have like this, and this sitting on my shelf at home. Can I send it?" Here's the thing. First of all, let's check that date. It's probably expired by a great deal. And if that is the case in America, you can take your expired medication. I know they have different drives and stuff, and some community outreaches that take expired medication, give them to dog clinics and whatnot. But please don't send them to Ukraine. That is not just not going to work for the soldiers, but it's also going to be a pain in the butt for you to ship, and you're going to pay extra money to send expired medication that we can't use. So in that case, I say thank you so much. Find a local place near you that takes expired medication and do good with it in America. But we
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
farms, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a need to kind of engage with, bigger companies to get what you need, versus what people can provide off the shelf, I suppose.
You know what would be really cool if I could connect with some American companies like Braun that supply safety
Loads of
bottle
antibiotics.
catheters. Huh?
Loads of antibiotics, yeah.
Well, no, not just that, but like so small supplies, like starting an IV, right? Starting an IV is something that usually I'm doing in the back of an armored vehicle, or I've done it in a trench, or in a van that's hurling down the road on a bad road. And there's like special catheters that are made by Safety Braun, I think, and they're anti-bleed. And so when you put it in, it doesn't bleed out, and you don't have to like immediately like sign up to the lure lock. Because if you put a normal IV in and you don't have like the safety tip, first of all, the needle's going to be exposed, which you have a risk there, but also blood's going to start flowing out of that catheter, which is good. It means it's in the right place, but now you have a lot more blood in an already bloody situation. If I could do anything, I would reach out to some of these organizations that make like small saline bags that are portable in the ambulance, and get those mass donated, or mass donated items like Mepilex, like wound care stuff. That would be cool. The things that we use every day that I think can really only be found in the US.
Yeah, well, you never know. There might be people in the space who work there. Never know.
But yeah, it's the Braun Introcans Safety IV. I'm obsessed with it. I only have a few left, and I've been hoarding them. I'm like, don't touch them. Any other questions?
On that, on that medical question thing. So obviously, I guess that not all you guys on the front are in perfect health, so they have kind of their own medical needs. How do they get their own personal medicines that they've been prescribed by their doctors and stuff like that? Does it go to a
They don't.
central area, or they don't?
They
Oh dear.
essentially, well, this is a big problem that I face. So you hope that they have enough, um, And then when you get to like the village by where you're fighting, you hope that there's a pharmacy, and you hope you have the time, and you hope you have the money to go and buy your medication. But if you don't, you come to me, and I'm going to sit you down, take your blood pressure. I'm going to ask you, what are you on? What did the doctors give you at home? Do you have any of those left? No, I don't, Beka. I was in the position for 2 weeks. I don't have anything left. I don't have a ride into town. The car got blown up, and I go downstairs to my little basement red room, and I see if I find the medication that they need. And if I don't have it that day, I try and call my friend in Kyiv, Katerina, and have her, I'll send her a PayPal and order it, and it will come in, and I'll take it to their house. I'll take it to their big bunker or wherever, because their health is already so compromised with the stress of the environment. I don't want any chronic conditions such as like high blood pressure, which is well managed with medication, to start like putting them at risk for a stroke because they're stuck in a bunker getting shot at without their blood pressure medication. And if you can imagine, no medication plus added potentially worse stress of your life will make you skyrocket.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. On the flip end of that as well is how currently with your guys and stuff that are kind of suffering from shell shock and stuff like that. How does that get treated when they're brought off the front line if they got shell shock and stuff like that? Where do they go? And if you can explain
To me,
that a little bit.
to me, we are in desperate need of psychologists. And the problem is that they need to have some experience in war psychology, because there's so many psychologists out there in the civilian atmosphere that want to help but don't necessarily know how to talk to someone that's just seen 5 of his friends die in the span of 6 hours, or has suffered life-changing injuries and will never see again. I'm always in need of Ukrainian or Russian speaking psychologists. So I'll actually put that out there too, guys. If you know, I'll do a phone call. Now I'm kind of like working as a psychological officer myself, because when the guys come in, especially the ones that came in after being surrounded, and I tried to do like a huge treatment for them. So I took the ones that were the most had been surrounded the longest, which was over a month, with no connection to the outside world, getting food by drones if the drones came, getting shot at constantly. And I brought them in and I assessed them. All of them had concussions. All of them had some hearing loss. All of them had extreme malnutrition, and a lot of them had long-term effects from the gas attacks, right? Because they're getting gassed on the position. And so I took them and I was like, I essentially made my med point into like a little rehabilitation spot. And I set up a bunch of cots, and I got them a shower and clean clothes and medications for their tummy, vitamins. I set up IV fluids for the ones that were dehydrated. And I did like a total, I think, as nurses here will know, head to toe, and tried to like see if they were okay, to look after them. And it turned into like a little sick ward. But then essentially that is all I can do at this point, because they're needed to go back to the front line. So they'll come in, they'll get a little respite, which is still in a very dangerous place with a lot of shelling, but like not a trench. And then they'll go back. But I did in that time, and my medics were wonderful. We tried to make it as relaxing as possible. So hot meals for them. My medics started cooking hot tea for them, the medications they needed, and also just the space and time to talk about what they had gone through, I think is super important.
Yeah, I think you spoke about that a little bit earlier about the lack of rotation as well, and those rotation times are the times where they can maybe unwind a little bit. But if they're not getting those rotations, then it's just pressure on pressure on pressure mentally. So yeah, the mental health side of things, very, very almost probably as important as the physical side of things. The physical injuries is the mental injuries as well, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Right. So another call out for any more questions. Joanna, I just want to test to see if your mic is working or not. I don't know if you're there. And if you are there, I can't hear you, Joanna. Can anybody hear Joanna? I think we might have lost Joanna. Joanna, you might have to recycle. I brought David K up. David, do you have a question for Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm an old Vietnam vet, and I live up where it's chilly in the winter, in North Dakota. And I worked on a volunteer fire ambulance and rescue for 20 years. And oddly enough, in gloves, I think the very best glove you can buy isn't terribly expensive, but you can buy them. They're fireman's gloves, and they're leather on the outside, kind of rough out leather, but the inside stays warm, and I don't give a dang. I mean, we used to wear them when it's 30 below zero. And as far as the underwear and stuff for the guys is, I guess you can buy it in Walmart and whatever. I ordered mine out of LL Bean, and tops to go with them. And if you can buy them for them, turtlenecks, sweatshirts or sweaters are good. Sweatshirts are even better, but turtleneck really helps keep you warm in the cold. And as far as I wanted to ask Beka about because here the dermatologist uses Vaseline on any kind of wound that they have. Mainly, it's in any wound, which is typical, is to put something that keeps the edges of the wound safe as it heals. And then those Mepaplex bandage, which you said, what size would you also? Because 3x3 seems to cover most wounds, unless it's shrapnel or something that's. I've been shot 4 times and blown up twice, and I could have used a 3x3 on any of those. That'd be my question to Beka, because they use those Vaseline jars, those great big jars of the Vaseline around the wounds and stuff. And I've had 54 cancer spots cut off, some of them as big as like an inch wide.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is maybe my favorite question plus statement. Thank you for that tip about the fireman's gloves. I've already got my sister here. She's got Google pulled up, and we're going to see if we can locate some of those. That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that. What a great suggestion. And the Vaseline, amazing. My favorite remedy is the Neosporin, which mixes the Vaseline with the antibiotic, and it's like an ointment, so it keeps that area from drying out. It keeps those edges protected, and it gives a little bit of that antibacterial product. The Mepalex sizes, I use all the sizes, and I use every single size there is, because the FPVs, when they hit in the dropped mines, give out these diffuse wounds. So you can have a tiny spot with like a little 2x2. You can have a little 4x4, and then you'll need a 10x10. And then you'll have somebody who's, whole booty needs a big old one because they got shot in the butt. So the Mepalex sizes I use, every single size. I even use those post knee operation Mepalexes, those long skinny ones. And I can cut those up and make 2 out of them. I use the ones that people use when they're in the hospital and they don't want to get a bed sores. I use those a lot on injuries on the booty, because it's the perfect size. So you know what? Thank you. And thank you for your service. Thank you for your continued service. I really appreciate that. And thank you for those recommendations about the long underwear and the turtlenecks. This was awesome. Thank you for that.
I really believe if you reached out to LL Bean, which is in Freeport, Maine, is the main office of theirs, they would probably help you.
I'm gonna have my sister send an email now. Thank you.
And the Mepiplex Band-Aids, I don't know where the cheapest ones are, but I do know that they work. People have
Yeah,
no.
I swear by them.
Yeah,
I swear by
there's,
them.
there's nobody that makes a better Band-Aid than they do.
And there's not like this thing is there's not a Ukrainian variant that I've found for that. That really works well. There's like obviously your generic versions, but they're still all kind of Western produced. I found one person in Kyiv that sells them, and I send Katerina to PayPal, and she gets them ordered to the Novus Post. In fact, that was one of the last purchases I made before coming over for my R&R. Mepilex. Who knew?
The other thing that I suspect works for you is Coban.
I love Coban.
Well,
Now we do have that available here, thank goodness.
isn't that wonderful stuff? I
It's
mean, for
amazing.
wounds,
And my guys that have
and
the
then you don't need to
psoriasis.
put tape on them all the time.
Yeah. Well, I use the Coban for the bandages, but I also use it when these guys, they've got the wear and tear injuries, the knees, the ankles,
Sure.
and yeah, helps them get a little pressure off and helps give some stabilization. Oh, yeah, you're speaking my language. Mepilex and
How
Coban.
about Telfa?
Hmm.
Do you use a lot of Telfa or not?
No, not really. Not really.
Well, I mean, I know the Band-Aids are better, but I was thinking of as far as money wise.
Yeah. No, don't use much
Because
of that.
we used to use it and then put Vaseline on the wounds and then put a Telfa on and then Coban to hold it on. If it's like on a leg or arm or some appendage, it works best.
I have, there's like a Ukrainian variant, just that one of those non-adherent pads types of things that we do use
Yeah,
sometimes. But these wounds are typically, they're very damaging. And
yeah.
so
You need
sometimes that,
absorption.
yeah, that's not really, doesn't provide the same amount of absorption as maybe even a
No,
gum.
it's not
Yeah.
even close to the Mepiplex
Yeah. And I need
Band-Aid.
absorptive stuff.
The other
Hmm.
thing they do, I think, don't you, it relieves the pain in the area. Those Band-Aids, because the moment you put them on, they feel good.
Yeah. And it's also psychological too for someone to come and dress your wounds. I do a lot of post wound care too with my soldiers to say they're off the battlefield and they're recovering.
Sure.
And I will go to the village and I'll have about 15 boys line up and they've got, 15 different pieces of shrapnel in their body coming out, or they'll have the shrapnel wounds that are healing. Give them the antibiotics. I put the cream on, I clean the wound, I put the bandage on, and it's so good. I think they just feel much better. And they said psychologically, it's good to know, like, I wasn't just wounded and forgot about. People are still going to take care of me.
No, and like those shrapnel wounds, you definitely need
Yeah,
an antibiotic for it.
absolutely.
Because the
Absolutely.
bullet wound makes and I've been shot 4 times, so, but they're almost better than if they don't hit something major, than a shrapnel wound. Some of the deep shrapnel wounds are just horrific things. People have no idea what
Yeah.
it looks like.
Yeah. No, they don't have any idea. And I said this once before too, working in the trauma bay, you in America, you get your gunshot victims. And when I started working in Ukraine, to see the damage, and I mean horrendous damage that shrapnel and diffuse munitions give, it was nothing I'd witnessed in America really.
No,
And
I mean,
so
just literally, and they're getting some of the howitzer rounds are so. I mean, they're meant to tear you up, and they just
they do.
unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then to be in the cold besides,
Yes. Oh, yes. And
because
then to have a long time for evacuation too can be even worse.
sure,
I had a guy with a chunk of shrapnel in his jaw for 11 days. And the boys with him, though, they took care of him. They were trying to give him a little bit of water because he could still swallow. But no pain medications. One guy had some antibiotics that his wife had given him in his rucksack. He gave him all his antibiotics. Um, thank God for that. And they all took
yeah,
care of each
yeah,
other.
yeah, because that's what you do in battle,
Yeah.
as you take care of one another, and try to relieve the pain the best way you can. but
Yeah.
usually they don't have anything.
Yeah. Well, you got to, they improvise. They all work together, and that's what I love.
They do. Men always, women too. I mean, it's not as if they can't get wounded with the same munitions. It's just that there's often more men involved in it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think rightfully so.
I've got a couple gals in the Ukrainian military I really look up to, and it's interesting because I think there's a lot of discussion in America about women in combat, and if you talk to the guys here about women in combat, they say, well, if the woman actually ends up in the combat line with us, we're relieved because it means she's tough, she's gotten this far, and they
They're,
don't
they're usually tougher, actually.
yeah, they're real tough. They're real
The-
tough, and
I,
they're seen
I,
as
I,
they don't need to be protected. They're
I
they'll kick
know.
somebody else's rucksack.
You know, the problem is, I always have thought, I guess, in battle, that let's say you and I both got wounded with the exact same wound, and a man comes along, who's he going to take out? You. And we're meant to do that, I think. I mean, men and women are basically different, but it's changed now a lot during my lifetime. And I think due to Israel, the way they use their men and women in combat. And I think it started kind of with that. I mean, there's been throughout history, of course, women that were infighting all the time in Russia and Ukraine and that area of the world is different than we are, like you said. And I definitely think they are tougher because they face different challenges that men don't ever face. But doesn't assuage what you're having to do with these people that are wounded and stuff and trying to help them, and then the people in the trenches. The best thing you can keep for them is just keep them warm, and clothing of any kind works. But, you know, like the long underwear, the best stuff we found, at least, is like stuff that's made to wear under ski clothing, so it's kind of tighter,
Yes.
and not so baggy.
Yeah, and I'm right. This is Grace, by the way. I just stepped in because I am taking notes as you say this and writing this down, looking it up, for these suggestions because we're worried about the boys getting cold. And I want to circle back. Becca stepped out for a second to what you were saying about women in combat, and what was so interesting coming from the U.S. military, and obviously it's a new military because I joined I think in 2013, but to see in Ukraine how it's a little bit different, and I said, guys, like, how is it? Because I know my military, the women, it's like, there's still some boundaries and barriers, and sometimes women are not an asset. I said, how is it with Rebecca? When she goes to the position, they said, oh, we're relieved. Like, oh, good, she's coming along. Thank God. Slava boho, they say. Uh, and it's she's one of the boys, and and I think it's to the point where, there's been and they always worry about women under fire. I'm just going to say this while she's out of the room. And can a woman drag a man? Rebecca has. Rebecca's evacuated soldiers under active shelling, full size men, gotten them out of there, not a problem. So I think people like that, those kind of women, we got to see more of them, because they're rare. And it's unique in Ukraine how it's the few women that are in the trenches with, they said, somebody smells bad, and we realized it was the girl, and they're all buddies, so it's a camaraderie I haven't really seen in the U.S. Army. I wish we had more of that, but those are some tough Ukrainian women, and Becca's tough, but
Yeah.
you sound tough too. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, a long
I,
time.
I respect Vietnam veterans. Like, you guys have been through so much, and most people have no idea the half of it. So, thank you for everything that you've done and that you're right now continuing to do, helping troops in Ukraine.
No, I'm just thinking of, like where I live or where I I did the ambulance thing for 20 years, I guess, and the rescue. I did a lot of rescues too, but stuff in the cold. And there's no question if you can keep yourself warm of any type of clothing you can get. It's too bad they can't wear the fireman outfit. And I don't mean the long coat, but they make a bib pant with a short jacket, and they're just incredibly warm. I mean, we've fought fires where the water is hitting you and you're soaked, and it'll actually freeze the outside of the skin of the thing, but you're as warm as toast inside. So any stuff that works with that is like the gloves and then the underwear from any of the big companies. And there's all kinds of them in the United States. I mean, that produce long underwear and the top that goes with it, and preferably the zip-up turtleneck all the way to the top. And then to get any kind of turtleneck, gaiters are nice, but the turtleneck shirt that goes is better. It just keeps all that warmth within your body and your chest. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that.
enough on me. I just wanted to volunteer whatever I could think of
I appreciate you.
in combat, because I know what. Because sometimes we'd go 10 days before you could get the guy out if you're under fire, and
Yeah.
taking shelling and it can't get a chopper in. God, those chopper guys were good. They'd come in under fire, and those helicopters would take 100 hits while they were landing. But those kids that sit there in those choppers waiting for you to load up the dead and wounded and haul them out of there, they were unbelievable help to frontline troops.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, that's one thing you haven't got, Rebecca, is heli-evac and stuff like that. Air support, have you, Rebecca?
Yeah, we unfortunately we do not have the medevac helicopters.
I know.
And a lot of the evacuations are done on unarmored vehicles because we just don't have enough armored vehicles either. So you just have to do with what you can.
Yeah.
I use a American, like a TCCC, like American Guide, sometimes when I'm teaching these medical classes, and it has like the casualty chokehold, like this illustration of triaging, and on one of the slides there's a big medevac helicopter, and everybody gets to that page and just starts laughing. Say, we don't have that here. I said, I'm sorry, I can't bring you one.
No Hueys.
Yeah.
When you need.
Okay, I think we've got Aria, who may have a question. Aria, welcome to the co-host seat next to me.
Thank you, Sir Shaggy. You're doing a great job. Rebecca, this is a very pleasant surprise. I did not know you were going to be coming, and I woke up to this. So this was unexpected. Popped up for a little bit. I hope you've been doing well, and thank you very much for all you are doing. It is truly inspiring. Just a quick question for you and a suggestion in regards to the great advice David was giving. There's a Maryland-based company which is huge called Under Armour, which makes sports and other type of clothing, both that is very breathable during the summer and is able to be worn in winter. And it's extremely effective at keeping warm. And they have been known in the past to do a lot of charitable work, right? They're one of the companies that actually does give stuff out to people that need. So I would recommend reaching out to them. There's also an American company. They've become big in the last couple of years for some reason. They used to be considered cheap sportswear. They're called Champion. They do similar charity work, and they make similar lines of winter clothing, right? That is very easy to move in, breathable, thin, which keeps the warmth in there, and it's extremely effective. And to what David was saying, right? The cold is very severe, even if you're not in the trenches. I mean, my grandfather lived into his 90s, and the only thing I ever heard the man complain about, the only thing he ever complained about was when he was in the Army during basic training in the winter, being in a tent in the, in the freezing and getting a frostbite and trench foot. Right. The cold is the biggest killer. It has long-term effects on people. So what is being talked about is very real. Rebecca, I have a question for you. I've been wondering for a great many months. Last time I had heard you speak and we had talked, there was a huge mouse and rat problem in the trenches. And I remember you were looking for solutions, and there were a couple of suggestions made by various listeners in that space. And I know I sent you some information on DIY rat traps that were able to catch 20 to 50 rats. And I know a couple of weeks after you came on, we stopped seeing the reports about the rats. In the videos, you stopped seeing the amount of mice and rats that we were previously seeing in all the trench videos. And I was wondering if that had any effect, or if the Ukrainian military managed to figure out some other form of a solution that managed to deal with the problem, because this has been a big mystery in the back of my head. And I was curious if you could shed any light. Thank you.
The Ukrainian military did not fix the problem, but the stuff that you sent me, I made my entire company watch. There's like a company, I don't know if you guys know, there's like battalions, companies, groups, whatever. And everybody went out, and boy, were they going to work. And we had some good, we actually ended up putting some in the homie traps. We ended up putting some mouse poison as well. We had some people donate a bunch of mouse poison, and we did see a decrease. So thank you very much. We also combined the mouse poison with the rat traps, like the DIY ones you had sent, and then just like sticky ones too. I have a lot of pictures of dead mice if you're interested.
Thank you very much for that, Rebecca. I appreciate the update. That's very good to hear, and it's a very appreciated the feedback, knowing that it did make some sort of a difference. I appreciate that profusely. We have a hand raised, so let's go to Angry Ants, and then we can continue the conversation. Ant, sorry, not Angry Ant. Sorry. Go ahead, Ant.
Hello, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depends on which part of world you are. Rebecca, I'm listening to you. You said that you are in need of good winter socks. And if you can drop me a DM, I will provide you with the source of Polish military wool socks. You can buy them very cheaply because they are like military stock, and the production varies from 2017 to 2022, and they are very cheap. They cost around $50, $50. So if you need them, I use them. They're very good. They new. They got they are unused. They are brand new. Just drop me DM. I'll give you the details. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Ant. Any things that can help Rebecca and our boys, much appreciated. David Kagan. David.
Yeah, I was just thinking that young fellow that's just talking right now. If you get the higher the sock on the leg, the better, because I mean it adds that extra warmth to it. And if you wear the long underwear over it or under it, doesn't matter. It's very helpful. So wherever he can get The higher, the better on the leg, I think.
They are a long one. They are a long one up to knee.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what they need. Keeping your extremities warm is no question the trick. Now I don't know, what do they wear mostly for boots there in the winter?
Just pretty much standard issue boots. I can send you a picture. I think there are a couple pictures I've got too. I'm sorry, I don't know how to drop something into the chat. But if you are injured and you end up at a stab point, we're gonna cut the boots off. So then you got to get new boots.
Exactly.
And say a round lands and hits them, new boots. So warm boots are always needed. Let me see, guys, if you give me a second, I'm gonna see if I can actually find a picture of my winter boots.
I was going to ask you a question about this, Rebecca. So when I was in like the air cadets and stuff like that, we had these things called puttees. Called puttees in the UK. They're basically a piece of fabric that you wrap around the top of your boot, and it stops water getting in. They used to use them in World War One and stuff like that. I'm just wondering if they used those kind of things in Ukraine. I haven't seen them on soldiers actually, so I'm just wondering if they use them.
No, I don't think that we do. I don't think we have those.
Okay, yeah, they're like kind of gate, I suppose, more modern things.
Like,
Gate.
well, what we do sometimes use, but we don't have a lot of, is like the mud gaiters. But we never have enough of them. We love a good pair of mud gaiters.
Okay.
And mud boots, especially when you're in the deep mud. Those, we call them babushka boots. And Tild, a friend of mine, she gave me some, and I wore those the whole Battle of Avdiivka. And I still have one boot left, and I do not know where the other pair is. Mud boots, yeah, those rainproof boots, and these ones have insulation. We love those. She gave me a good amount of those. Let's see if I can drop a picture of these mud boots in there.
I've got a picture in my head now of you hopping around in one boot.
This is this is a picture. I'm gonna drop this in chat. This is me in my mud boots, and I'm getting the guys ready for position, and I'm putting gas masks in their bags. And this house is actually occupied as of last week by the Russians. They took this house.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to put any posts up in the nest, Rebecca, just feel free.
I think I missed it. I tried
to share them up there. Right, let's go to Aria, and then back to Aria, then Joanna and Surfella.
So on that same note, both during World War One and during World War II, various armies would wrap the soldiers' boots and shoes in cloth during winter, right? And the little bit of moisture, especially if there's snow and ice on the ground, will turn that shell hard, and it will protect the inside boot from getting that first layer where it can get penetrated and wet. So it's not effective as far as if you have to do a lot of movement or if it's not, snow. But if there is snow, even just wrapping regular cloth bed sheets or scarves and, ace bandages and stuff can form a protective layer around the boot, increasing the general warmth of the foot, to my understanding. I believe it was Ayana next, and then Surf Fella.
Thank you. So I wanted so much to speak with you, and I couldn't earlier. So I'm glad that I can now. Amazing segment, and Rebecca, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. So back to the medicines. Basically, what I understood is that you rather prefer the financial help than people sending you medicines, because you can kind of procure everything you need in Ukraine. But I wanted to ask you if there is something you find it difficult to find, because I know that here in Romania there are some NGOs that are sending medical supplies to Ukraine regularly. It's mostly for the civilians, not for the army, but I think it can be arranged. And I wanted to ask you if there is like medical devices, medical equipment, or medicine, something that you need, and it's kind of difficult to find.
Yeah, there certainly are occasions. I know recently I was looking for like heparin, like some blood thinners for a soldier I had that had a deep vein thrombosis. Would you send me a personal message just kind of describing that, and I'll connect with you directly, and then when there comes a time when I need a specific medication, I'd love to be able to reach out to you, because Romania, I'm pretty sure we can ship. You guys can, yeah, you're close. It wouldn't be the same wait time as from America.
Yeah, exactly. We are kind of close, and as I said, there are some NGOs that are sending regularly shipments, mostly to Odessa because it's easier, but it can be done in other ways. Yes, I'll send you a message, and thank you.
Thank you.
Aria?
Rebecca, we have a question from one of the listeners who is unable to speak. They were wondering if you speak Ukrainian and to what extent you have spoken, you're able to speak Ukrainian. And then I'm going to add on to that, how has your Ukrainian improved in your time of service? Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. So I do speak a bit of Ukrainian, and I actually predominantly speak Russian because for the last 2.5 years I've been working in the Donetsk Oblast, where so many of the people there, that is their first language. And I understand a lot more Russian than I do Ukrainian. Actually, most of my soldiers are from Donetsk Oblast, the Severodonetsk area. And there's a lot of people that have things to say about, speaking Russian and whatnot. But here's what I know. My soldiers are incredibly, incredibly brave. And they, yes, of course, might communicate in Russian, but they're trying to win the war for Ukraine so that the Ukrainian language can survive. And so we say, let's win the war, and then we can all study and become proficient in Ukrainian together.
It's interesting you said that, because I was reading an article about Rosh Hashanah, right, in the Ukrainian army and what's been done in the last year. And one of the things that I found very interesting was the Jewish Federation of Ukraine, at the request of the Ukrainian Jewish community, printed the prayer books this year for the first time in Ukrainian, because there has been a massive movement to start speaking Ukrainian. And you see this in every area, right? So even, it's interesting that you said that, right? Even the soldiers who grew up speaking Russian, who are on the front lines, they want to be able to speak Ukrainian. They want to be able to speak the language their grandparents spoke.
Yeah.
And they are fighting for its survival because Russia is committing a genocide against Ukraine and will destroy every aspect of their culture and national identity, if they are successful. So, thank you for that.
No worries.
Sir Fella, thank you for your patience. Over to you.
Hey, no worries. It was to say, Rebecca and Grace, I sent you some DMs. I don't know if Grace can work her magic to a load of UK companies. I used to stock their products when I had a couple of outdoor stores, but they were always quite generous with giving bits of kit. I don't know if they've been tapped up already by anybody. One makes a lot of warm clothing, winter kit that a lot of the UK forces will buy as supplementary. The guys will buy supplementary stuff to their issued kit. There's also a really good company called Heat Holders that make some of the best socks I've used. I do a lot of dog sledding and working in the winter. They're synthetics. They dry really fast, but they are incredibly, incredibly warm and comfortable to wear. You don't get any chafing like you can do with wool socks. And the other company was Life Systems, which do a lot of the sort of first aid stuff for outdoor people in the UK, like waterproof first aid kits for kayakers, that kind of thing. But they do a lot of water purification tablets and water droplets that you can put in I think pretty much every outdoor shop in the UK, and there are thousands of them stocked there. their products for sort of what we call Duke of Edinburgh for when the kids go off on doing their school trips. And it just got me thinking, I wonder if they've got stuff that's damaged packets, seconds. I know we bought a whole load of Mozzie repellent off them that had damaged packaging and did it cheap in the shop and giveaways when people were buying kit to go on expedition. So it might be worth tapping them up. I don't know if Grace can work her magic with them. If I could be any help, just give me a shout.
Yes. And she helps me a lot with Grace helps me a lot with some of this logistics stuff she's taking on. Grace, what is your username so they can send you questions?
It's Affectionate War.
Affectionate War?
It's just I can change that, but it's
Let me spell it for them.
okay. You
I'll
can just
drop
actually type it out.
I'll drop it. So if you guys have stuff, it is hard for me to keep track of everything and answer a lot. I have hundreds and hundreds of messages. My sister is, since she's with me now, great person to send a message to, and then some of the stuff that you guys have mentioned, like Ella Bean and just what you just said just now, send on to Grace, and then that's two more minds to remember it.
Perfect. Okay, I'll just forward those messages. I've just followed you,
Yeah.
Grace, and just found you. So
Can somebody drop her username into the chat there?
Yeah, I was going to say, Grace, if you want to
Yeah, I'm
DM
going to do that. I'm going to put the username down into the purple pill. I'll make a post about it.
Yeah, stick that post up in the nest as well. Rebecca, I put the post with you in your babushka boots up in the nest as well. So a post from Grace would be awesome as well. Back to you, Aria.
I'm sorry, I should have waited to put my hand up. Apologies, Sir Shaggy. I was going to go do that. But in the meantime, we have another question from a listener for Rebecca. As far, if you'll give me 1 second, I apologize. Twitter is being fun at the moment.
No worries. I can ask a question first, Aria, if you want.
Hold on, I got it. Thank you, Sir Shaggy. So the question is about multi-resistant bacteria in the treatment, and they had ready report about a very high degree of this problem in the Ukrainian military, right? So I assume the question is asking, as far as bacteria and treatments or super bacteria or diseases that are resistant to treatment or only come out in these types of conditions. Right. How is the situation, and what is being done to address it? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I have to tell you, I'm more on the acute side of things. So I'm dealing with the soldiers before they're, going inpatient into the hospital, and I'm not working in the hospitals. I'm working, evacuation and stabilization. So I can't really speak to some of those more bacterial resistant diseases, or like MRSA, as it were, because that's something that's mostly seen in like the outpatient and inpatient setting. And I'm working more with like battlefield injuries or more like, chronic health conditions of our soldiers.
Got you. Thank you very much for the response and the honesty there. I think it was a very good question and a very fair response. So appreciate it. With that, Sir Shaggy, I'm going to hand it back to you so I can make that post and put it in the purple pill and the nest so people can contact her. I'm going to hand the microphone back to you, man.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, question. Going back a little, Rebecca, I had a question about women's equipment in the Ukrainian army, because I know there was a problem with with plates and stuff, and getting them fitted for women in the Ukrainian military. Has that improved any? Are there kind of female plates available now, or is it still kind of difficult?
I think they've actually put some new stuff out about making female modification, not only plates, but body armor. I don't think the plates themselves were changing as much as like the body, the like the body armor holder. And they have made some body armor that's conducive to the female form. Hold on real quick, guys, sorry. And I actually wear one of those that is made especially for the female autonomy.
Okay, all right, yeah, it's really early for you in the morning. If we're keeping you too long, Rebecca, just let us know.
No, it's fine. No. I just wanted to answer your question. No, let's see here. It is, it's like 6:41, but I'm doing okay.
Okie dokie. All right, brilliant. Edward, a question for Rebecca.
Yeah, thanks for your service. But the question that I have is, do you have set up like a Amazon type account, like in Poland or something, where you can specify a list of things that you might need? Pardon me, I'm walking while talking. Over.
In Poland. That's a good idea.
We need a good address in Poland.
I need to find a shipping address in Poland.
I have the list, but it's gonna.
I have a list,
but it comes to the States.
And my sister's still working on that. If I had a reliable source of shipping to Poland, and then knowing that there was an immediate turnaround to ship to Ukraine, absolutely, I'd love to do that.
Tried that before. There was a delay.
We did that once or twice before, and there was a delay. But that's something I would love to be able to do that. I will tell you, shipping from Poland, there's always delays at the border, right? So in the past, when we've been able to locate someone to ship them from Poland, typically the parcels are held up. And that's just the name of the game at this point in the war. That's all I can say about that. It would be convenient. I can make a wish list, kind of show you guys price points and what's needed the most, but most of these items are available in Ukraine, and what we need to do is push for Amazon to ship to Ukraine. I think I saw some article about potentially there being an opportunity there. We'll see.
All right, thanks a lot. Terry, welcome.
Hi, Shaggy, and Aye, and Beka. I've heard the same thing. I'm sure I found a tweet just the other day. That's what I came up to say. Amazon are planning to ship, and they're setting up something with, is it Nova Posta or Ukroposta?
Novus Posta, yes. Ukroposta and Novus Posta are the two main shipping places.
Right. I'm sure that it is in the process of being set up, but if I find the tweet, I'll direct it to you.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
What?
All right then. Oh, go, David.
I was just going to ask, what sizes are the most common? I know there's no every size there is, but
For what?
for clothing.
Men's large, probably.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
that works. Like even for the smaller guys, they'll take something that's too big.
Sure, of course.
It's closed.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like vest type things too that would keep them warm. In those cases, probably XL would probably be better, because if they're wearing the body armor, we just
Yeah, well, sometimes so when the guys are wearing the body armor, they'll tell you, because they need to readily like grab their magazine pouches and stuff like that, and the AK, they tend to wear their uniform and any coat under their body armor, and put the body armor on top so that they can grab all their stuff.
Yeah, that makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
What do they have a standardized coat that they wear?
They do get like a winter coat. It's not that great. It's usually a pixel one that the Army gives them.
Yeah.
But the Army still also runs out of uniform too. So like when I went to go get my uniform, there was no small t-shirt sizes because they'd already been gone. And so I ended up with like a men's 55, size 55 European, with my 3 pairs of socks and some pants that were a little bit too short, but that's what they had. And they don't have, they're really out of the war belts, like the RPS systems,
Yeah.
those war belts that you put on. They don't have those. They've just basically all made out, and manufacturers are trying to make new. Um, and there's a couple other items. They make a list of what you're supposed to be issued. But again, this is a massive war with we're getting new soldiers all the time and trying to equip them. I couldn't imagine trying to do that. There's going to be some shortages, and there are shortages. So we got to do what we can.
But the guy that mentioned the Under Armour and all, because there's so many big
I know. I wish that would make me so happy if
companies.
I could just find one, yeah, um, charitable organization or a company that makes the stuff that would send it. That would be so amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
North American Rescue, I used to be very hopeful. I used to reach out to people like this. I used to reach out to North American Rescue. I would reach out to these different organizations that provided things that my soldiers needed. And there was always just like we're so sorry about what's happening in Ukraine, but this is not something we do, is like do a relief. And I don't know if maybe it's not interesting to them. Maybe they've got like their own political alliances and they can't like readily support a war. I don't know what it is, but it was discouraging. Even North American Rescue was like, "Yeah, sorry, I'm very sorry, but
No,
like
I'm
we're
sure.
not."
I'm sure that's a
Stuff.
standardized line. We don't get into political things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
I think
I'm
for
gonna ask.
disaster
Yeah,
reason they would do
I'm
that.
gonna ask the company here in town. It was started by Shields, SCHELS. They've got stores they've opened all the way across the country, and it's the best sporting goods store I've ever been in my life. And I've been in almost every large company in the world, but these guys also give an incredible amount of money to the communities. And I know the second in command pretty well. He and my son are best buds, and they travel together. And he's second in command of their campus over there. There's about
Shields, yeah, I see that. My sister just pulled it up. That looks nice.
they have everything. They sell every breed known to man.
Wow.
I'll ask Matt. His name's Matt Howell. I'll ask Matt if they ever do that, because I always think of these sporting goods stores because at the end of the year, like the cold weather stuff, and they go to new stuff, there's something in the chain that doesn't get sold.
Mm-hmm.
And there's got to be a lot of that throughout the U.S. that could be donated.
Absolutely.
I'll ask Matt because he's um, next to Steve Shields, who owns the place. It's privately owned, but they're open throughout the United States. These huge stores. So
Yeah, my sister's looking at the website now.
yeah, I'll ask Matt tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, David. Yeah, any help, any contacts, much appreciated. Really good to get these big companies on board. I've got some Under Armour stuff. I've had it for years now, and it still works. It's brilliant stuff. Jenny, you have a question?
Yeah. So Rebecca or your sister Grace, for that matter, if you can send a list of things, because I know two NGOs, one out of Sweden, one out of the Netherlands. The one coming from Sweden is called the Yellow and Blue Car, and they drive down ambulances chock full of all kinds of medical equipment, and I can get in touch with people who know them and say focus on these things. It's maybe it's unnecessary to send gas masks when you need needles instead. I know that.
Well, we also need gas masks.
Well, yeah,
yeah, but I understand what you're saying.
But I know that in the spring of 2022, when they cleared out the hospitals in Stockholm of the stuff that was like near the expiration date for the hospital to use, they filled 2 cargo planes with medical equipment that they sent down to Ukraine. And And so I'm pretty sure that they still have stuff that they, need to, that could be better used elsewhere than in the Swedish hospital. And
Yeah.
also, gosh, I'm having like a snot brain because my son gave me a cold. Sharing is caring, apparently. I wish that he would.
There you go.
I wish he would keep some stuff to himself. Uh, but then there was another NGO that I know as well. And I do know that the Swedish military, and I don't know if the US does this as well, in the latest military package, they sent down a lot of winter clothing, winter gear for soldiers, because we can buy more here in Sweden. We have easier access to it. And I hope that other countries do the same when they send out military packages. It was something that they don't mention. And then when I looked at the government site, then there it was. Also, I saw on a tweet, apparently the APVs that Sweden are sending, I think it's like around 200 of them.
I saw.
Yeah, they're in the Czech Republic, so they should be in Ukraine soon if they're not already there.
I've been watching for them. I've been tracking that.
I was I was so happy when I was both happy and angry when I saw the tweet. I was like, "Upsack, come on, you can't let the Russians know when they're coming." But at the same time, I'm super happy they're actually on their way. I actually thought that they were already in country, but I think it was like last week that they were in the Czech Republic, so not too far away. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you get like a whole bunch of them.
Me too. I don't know how do you know how many there were?
So Sweden had a total of 300 at one point. I don't know how many of them were in good use. I heard a number around 200 that were in good use with, like they refurbished them and made them good to use. And Sweden only retired them, I think it was like in the 2000s. I don't remember if it was 2007 or 2017. And they were made like ages ago. I think they're even older than me. And my kids say that I was around at the time of the dinosaurs, so I'm really old. And but but apparently they were really good, and they use them, and they can be used to cross rivers with. So they're amphibious as well.
I can't wait. I hope we get some. I hope we get some.
Me too. I'm like, I wish I could like call shotgun on them and go like, okay, these 10, 15, 20, 100 go to Rebecca. But
no, I want them distributed evenly. I'll be happy with just one.
Oh no, 5 at least. But I don't have that like political pull in Sweden that I can, earmark for you. I wish I did. But
no, it's all right.
But they're on their way, so at least there's another 200 on their way, as far as I know.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I'll let you know the minute they come in, or I see one.
I'll be happy when I see them delivered to Ukraine, either crossing the border or actually in the hands of your guys and you, Rebecca. We hear lots of stuff that's on the way, and various amounts are being pledged or stuff like that. But I'm a bit wary of that kind of talk. When I see when it's delivered, I'm happy. I suppose you are as well. And yeah, just another reminder to everybody: if you want to go to and help Rebecca out with some donations, go to her Twitter profile. PayPal's on there, and use that. Be generous, because it's going to be helping Rebecca to help save lives, basically. So do that. Right. Any other questions? Anybody? Any questions? Unless I've got Twitter pops again, I can't see any hands at the moment. So if you've got any questions for Rebecca while she's spending the time with us, then shoot that hand up in the air. Aria, have you got any more questions while we're here?
I'm sorry, you were starting to break up there at the very last second. I did not hear the last thing you said after Twitter Pox and could not see any other hands. But if there are no hands and you are done, Rebecca, I do have another question for you.
Sure.
So I was wondering how useful has super glue and similar types of sealing agents, right? I know in the US recently they've started selling medically this stuff that looks like insulation foam for houses that you can put into wounds that's more effective than sutures, right? I know for myself, I've saved myself having to get stitches a great number of times by using super glue. I was wondering how effective and useful have you found that to be in regular battlefield applications, because that's where you're doing your work, is on those types of injuries. Thank you.
No worries. That's a good question, and I'll tell you kind of why for my situation this is not effective, and it's twofold. One, most battlefield injuries involve massive bleeding, and the glue is not effective if the area it's placed on is still wet and like actively squirting blood, right? So the properties and adhesives are not going to be working if there's moisture constantly on the area. So in this instance, the best thing is to stop the bleeding. And how would we do that? With a tourniquet, with making wound packing, etc., etc. Secondly, it would make a very hard sell for me to tell people, hey, we are having life and death situations. Let's try something like super glue. And they would immediately come back and be like, why don't they test that back in the US or in another non-active combat zone? Or in a scenario where an additional resource could be used, like say it's a controlled study or they use it in the back of an ambulance, where there's like other equipment available to fix just in case that doesn't work. But if we start issuing super glue and that fails, um, it's going to be like, why did we use this in the worst of scenarios instead of kind of bringing it into light and studying it and combat approving it. um and it's very much the same. Some people have been asking me about like certain hemostatics that have been made, and they're like, this is a fraction of the cost, and there's a factory that made this with like and they use the same material, but they don't know exactly how much material, but sometimes it works. And I said, that is awesome. Let's get that tested, combat tested, in a controlled setting where there's other resources available before we distribute it among people that have very little resources at all. Does that make sense?
100%, and I agree with you, right? It's very useful for things like cuts, or even it can be used on deeper wounds that are bleeding, but you have to stop the bleeding with pressure, and you many times have to reapply the super glue, right, in order to get a large enough bond on it because of that additional wetness. So you're 100% correct. I was thinking more in regards to smaller things, right, that might keep a soldier from being able to function on the battlefield, but at the same time wouldn't require them to go to a hospital if they were to get that. But I hear you with bullet wounds and stuff, short of the more expensive, I forgot the technical term of the sealing agents. Um,
Yeah.
doesn't
And to
work. And I
add to
think
that,
that's really expensive. I don't think they have
no,
funds for that stuff.
right. Well, and to add to that point too, basically what's in your medical kit is the very bare essentials to save your life. And so if I add super glue, the guys are going to open that and be like, oh my gosh, this is something life saving. I'm going to use it, and maybe not know also, is it going to be in Ukrainian? Is it going to come with instructions? Who's going to teach them how to use it? Or are they going to think it's like some kind of paste? Because the language barrier is a real thing. I don't even put, at this point, if the guys are going, I put only the very bare necessities in that medical kit to save them. If I add one thing, like somebody was adding CPR masks, the guys had no idea how to use that. It said CPR mask in English, and they're like, what is this plastic piece? And so we took that out because nobody wanted to use it. CPR isn't recommended, if someone dies from like hemorrhagic blood loss. So it's all these like little nuances that people get frustrated with me, but I always want to explain like the different nuances as to why we can't just randomly add stuff to the med kit. But I like the idea. I like where you're coming from.
I appreciate the very detailed breakdown and explanation of the thought and the process behind it. And that clears it up for me now. In the future, I will not be wondering that, repeatedly when I'm hearing stuff from people speaking or interviews. So thank you very
No,
much.
I like that. I love questions like this. If you have an idea, if you have a suggestion, if you are thinking about something, you can always ask me. And if I have the time and you take the time to ask me, I'll give you an answer. And then it won't just be like, I don't want to just dismiss it, just be like, no, that won't work. I want to tell you why, because then that promotes you just to keep thinking about situations like this. But also, I want to appreciate the thought you have put in. There's no such thing as a
Yeah,
stupid
yeah,
question, is what I always like to say.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Any tips that people can give you, you can either say, "Yeah, I know that one," or "Oh, I didn't know about that one." Like the one David K did before. And just before we go to David K, David, if you can give me a follow back, if that's okay, then I can DM you because I can't DM you at the moment. Over to you, David K.
Done. I suppose you use sutures mostly, don't you, on the smaller wounds, unless they're going to be a problem infection-wise. Sometimes you leave them open for a while.
Yeah, so the suturing is done at a later stage.
Yeah.
And so they do use sutures. I think they use some skin staples. They also use a lot of wound vacs if the wounds are quite substantial. But yeah, my main thing basically, I'm not going to do anything surgical in my area of capacity, right? I'm going to keep them alive. Um, the most I will do is like work at a stabilization point, but in terms of surgical capacities, I don't even have that at my med point.
Do you use mostly gauze to add pressure to them?
Yeah, so for the uncontrolled bleeding, if it's on a limb, we'll use a tourniquet. If it's in the red zone, we're going to put that tourniquet high and tight. We're going to get them under some cover. Then we're going to look at the wound, see, do we need that tourniquet? Is it a massive bleed? Is it a small bleed? If it is a massive bleed, if I have some cover, I will get that tourniquet 2 or 3 inches above the wound itself for a little bit of a closer thing. That way, if they're delayed in evacuating, if they need an amputation, it's not all the way up the arm where the first tourniquet was placed. Then, if this is long evacuation time and this is not an amputation, I might even try and convert that. So I'm going to fill that wound with hemostatic gauze. I'm going to fill it up real nice and tight. I'm going to stop the bleeding. I'm going to hold pressure on that wound, right? And I'm going to see if the bleeding has stopped, if I can control it. I'm going to wrap it up with a bandage, like an Israeli bandage. I might even splint it. And if I'm able to tamponade and bandage that wound and there's no rebleeding, I can then get that tourniquet off so that they don't have compartment syndrome. The junctional areas, say somebody's hit in the groin, under the arm, in the neck, that's also a time where I'm going to take that gauze, that packed gauze, and I'm going to put it in the wound and I'm going to apply pressure. And I'm going to hold pressure on and make sure, because we like to hold pressure 3-5 minutes. And theoretically, if you're not too cold and you have your blood clotting factors working effectively, you should be able to make some pretty decent blood clots in that time. If you're not, or if you're having a massive bleed and I can't get you to stop bleeding, or the bleeding is you're starting to get cold, you're going to start bleeding again, because the colder you get, the looser your blood gets, so it starts to rebleed. And there's a drug for this called TXA. And basically what this drug does is it promotes the little factors to kind of make little doors on your walls of your cells so that the blood doesn't seep. It makes your blood stickier, essentially. And this is something I train my combat medics to give. You give a dose of that. And what? 1 second, guys, hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, when Rebecca can come back, that's cool. After that, we'll go to Tiramisu, and nice to have you on the panel. And then Sir Fella, and then Colonel Jeff. I've seen him come up as
Oh,
well.
sorry guys, I didn't realize
So
somebody raised hands. Anyway, yes. Long story short, I'm just kind of just going for those of you out there that like are maybe wondering like what some wound care would look like. I'm just trying to explain it, but I'll move on. Sorry guys.
So
yeah,
in the meantime, just really quickly, I'm going to jump in and take my privilege up here in the seat. Somebody sent a comment on a suggestion pertaining to these companies, and I think it was a very good suggestion. And that is, Rebecca, for you to pick 2 or 3 companies, one in the US, one in Europe, that we fellas can focus on calling and sending emails and social media messages, right? And we can actually get a campaign going where they get, 50, 100, a couple thousand people reaching out to them. And that probably will get them to send something, right? It might be only 20 shirts. It might be, a small check. But when you do that, it tends to get a result. Whereas one person reaching out, you're what you were saying before is correct. You're most likely, unless you have a personal connection with the company, going to get at best a nice letter back saying, we support you, we're sorry, but we don't get involved in stuff like this. We can't do it, right? So I think it would be really worth your time to pick a couple of companies, and we can get a campaign going. We can retweet it, and I would be happy to make a couple of calls, right, and send a couple of emails out in respect to that. So I think it's worth doing. I'm going to hand it back to you, Sir Shaggy, because I have no idea the hand order.
yeah. Hand order is Tiramisu, then Sir Fella, then Colonel Jeff.
Hey everybody, thank you for making me speaker, having me on. Hi Rebecca, it's very good to hear you talk as always. So I'll just be real quick. I tend to fly under the radar kind of on social media, but I actually run a surgical team that works in the same area of operations that Rebecca did at some point. She and I go way back, I think. And so if anybody, I won't take up too much of the kind of space overall because it's her show, but if anybody has specific questions relating to like surgery and things that happen maybe kind of after a casualty gets to a stabilization point or an operating room, I'll be happy to answer them. And otherwise, I just want to be here to support Rebecca because I think the world of her. She's a hero. She's doing incredible work, and she deserves all of your support.
Thank you. Yes, guys. I think earlier there was some questions about suturing and whatnot, and I was explaining my pre-hospital role, which is what I love and do. Tiramisu is on the other side of that. So he works on them after I evacuate them. So, and he has a lot of insight onto like, common wounds, infrastructure problems. He can very concretely explain to you why eco flows and generators are needed. So yeah, if you medical people or people wanting to get some medical questions about like post battlefield care, definitely.
Excellent. Any follow up, Tiramisu?
No, I'm just happy to answer questions, and I'm love talking about medicine. I would venture to say there's probably not too many foreigners, other than people that are actually contracted with the Ukrainian military, who have operated on more wounded Ukrainian casualties than I have. I'm probably somewhere between 500 and 1,000 operations over the past year. So feel free to ask me whatever you want.
All right, cool bananas. Let's go to Sir Fella and then Colonel Jeff.
Well, this is perfect because I was going to ask this to Rebecca, but tiramisu. This is perfect timing that you've come up with this. So I was going to ask about tourniquets. So we're always sort of taught here with that sort of basic, first aid that we do, out of hospital stuff, just lay people, lifeguards, and what have you. If you're going to put a tourniquet on, it's life over limb. So we've got to expect that limb is not going to survive. That person's going to have it off. We're told about sort of 2-hour window where we can leave that on for, writing the time on that it's put on, all that kind of stuff. But so it's really interesting what you're going through, Rebecca, and how you treat those wounds and how you go about treating it, and then to actually need the tourniquet on, put it on initially, but then take it off. Of course, you guys have got all kind of drugs that can help with the toxins and stuff that build up. But I was just interested to know how many, I suppose not percentages, but when you do use a tourniquet on one of your casualties, how many of them actually have that limb survive rather than have it amputated at a later date. So I think this is perfect for probably the both of you for the pre-hospital care and then tiramisu with the in-hospital care, if that makes sense.
Very good question. And I'll start on my end because it's where it all starts. And that is with the knowledge and education of each soldier in that initial time, because, like I said, not enough medics. So if you're in a group of infantry and you've got 12 guys in a trench and you've got no combat medic, somebody sees blood, they immediately think tourniquet, and it turns out to be a light scratch because nobody goes back later and checks, like, did that wound actually need a tourniquet? And they put it high and tight, right? Because that's what they've been told, as high and tight as possible. Then, and I'm sure Tiramisu can tell you himself, if there's a delayed evacuation time, that person can lose their limb. And so we start with the training. And my goal, too, is if you know how to put on a tourniquet, you should also know if it's needed, where to put it, at what point you might need to reassess it, if it can be converted, and other stuff like that. Because what we had a problem with no tourniquets at all, and then we had a problem with a lack of education regarding the tourniquets, when to use them, how to use them, why to use them, and people ended up on both sides of the spectrum, not getting a tourniquet at all, bleeding to death, getting a tourniquet they didn't need, losing a limb. And so that's where I try to bridge the gap with a lot of my medical training too, is teaching the guys to look at the wound. Don't just, even if somebody comes to you and someone else put a tourniquet on them, look at the wound. Don't just say, oh, they have a tourniquet. See what kind of wound it is. Cut open that sleeve. Take a look at it. Does it need more? Is it working? Is it not working? Always double check. Anyway, I'll let you go on, Tiramisu.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we see a lot less inappropriate tourniquet use recently. In the past, 6 months or so than I heard about kind of in the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. I think people like Rebecca and lots of other groups that are doing medical training about the appropriateness, that really does help. And the thing about losing limbs versus not losing limbs is it's not just about the tourniquet. The much bigger determinant of that is how much damage is done by the original injury. A lot of people that do end up getting amputations for whatever reason, they come in with these just grossly deformed limbs and absolutely massive tissue damage where it basically just looks like hamburger, and you can't even tell what the different structures are. And we actually have in one of the brigades that we're partnered with, we have two very good vascular surgeons who are actually in the brigade, and so they are very good about being able to determine whether something is salvageable or not. If it is a simple kind of arterial puncture that required a tourniquet, I can fix that. You just put two little clamps on the artery, and then you either suture or do a little graft. It takes about 15-20 minutes tops, and that's all the patient needs to be able to survive to the next level of care. They're probably going to need a revision of the artery, but we don't necessarily have to do that in the first 12 or 24 or 36 hours. If it's something more extensive, then it is really done on a case by case basis. But I have not seen what I thought were too many unavoidable limb amputations recently. It much more has to do with that if somebody has just a catastrophically destroyed limb, they can be at the best medical center in the entire world and have a trauma and an orthopedic surgery team standing by, and if the bone is pulverized, the arteries are grossly destroyed, the muscle and the tissue are grossly destroyed, denuded, what have you, we're just not going to be able to save it. And that's the unfortunate reality of a lot of these types of high explosive blast fragmentation injuries, is no matter how much revision, how much work we're willing to put in the OR, some of them are ultimately not going to be salvageable.
Thanks
That's
very much.
fantastic, guys. That's really interesting and fascinating to hear from kind of both sides as well. I think we're all taught that you put a tourniquet on, you don't touch it until a medical professional arrives. Now, luckily for us, an ambulance is going to be 10, 15 minutes because we're not in the middle of nowhere. We're either sort of close to civilization, but yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate that.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, David.
I was just going to ask, do you get, I would guess, I don't know this, that you get more shrapnel type injuries than actually bullet holes?
Who is that question for, David?
Either one, the doctor or Rebecca. I was just wondering which wound you get the most. I would guess shrapnel, because they just are devastating, the wound. People have no clue. Like he was just talking about how badly deformed the body can get with a hit, and then they have to fix the wound.
I will tell you from my view, artillery and munitions from drones most frequent in my area of operations right now. Because a lot of it is much easier to fly a drone over and drop something in a trench or run it into a vehicle than to be like so many meters apart and like physically shoot someone with an AK. That's more we call like the wild bullet. So I'm seeing a lot more, and I don't know when you popped on Terracy, I was telling them I was seeing a lot more diffuse injuries as opposed to just like a 762, like something you would see in the trauma bay where it's just like a plain simple gunshot wound. These are complex injuries, very complex, a lot of mine injuries as well. And I'm sure Terrasu can also speak to that.
Yeah, and like over a year of operating, I think I've seen exactly 3 gunshot wounds. 2 of them were accidental. I think the soldiers just literally shot themselves in the lower limb by accident. And then the third that I can specifically think of was a ZSU soldier actually got the $1 million wound through the backside with a 12.7 millimeter machine gun round. I think he was on an offensive operation and he got 1 bullet, 4 holes, so to speak, had a nice big chunk of his butt missing, but was otherwise totally fine. I mean, 98% of everything we see coming in is blast fragmentation and burn injuries from FPV drones and artillery. And I would even say FPVs are probably even more common now than artillery.
Thanks a lot, Tiramisu. Colonel Jeff.
Hey, Rebecca. My God, it's great to talk to you. I follow you religiously. I get stoked when I see positive posts. You break my heart when I see you sad or dejected. But my God, you're an angel. Truly are. You're doing God's work, and I bet if I had a kid like you, my God, I'd be proud as all get out. As a ground force commander, if I get to Ukraine every now and then. If I ever meet you, I'm going to bear hug you and just give you a huge congratulations because I think you're knocking it out of the park. The question I have for you, I don't know if you follow me back or not, but I've been very, very active in trying to increase the amount of air power and air dominance that Ukraine can manage to get into the theater. I was a big advocate for F-16s. I've been a huge advocate for more HH-60s, being able to get to the point where those are transitioning more to. And as a combat ground commander, I know how important that golden hour is, right? And I'm just wondering if you or the doctor seeing any increase in the response time in actually getting the wounded out of the field. Are you seeing rotary wing, or is air still kind of shut down?
That's a negative. Air is shut down. I will tell you that the majority of my patients are ground transported from the Donetsk Oblast out to usually the Dnipro Oblast. And that's
So I got more work to do, evidently. All right.
no worries. Thank you for all you've done.
Yeah, thanks, Colonel Jeff. Aria, I see your hand in the air.
So I have another question, Rebecca, if you have the time, from another listener who was unable to raise their hand. So this question is for Rebecca and also Tiramisu. And do you ever treat civilians? What happens to the babushkas living near the front line that refuse to evacuate? Thank you very much.
I'll enter on May. Yes, I treat everyone. There have been times where on one trip I took 4 wounded soldiers, and the next trip I took a wounded elderly gentleman and 2 soldiers. I will never refuse care to anyone. In fact, in my current area of operations, there is a lot of strikes on the town nearby, and I always drive over if I'm not on the position evacuating and assist with that. In regards to the other question, what happens to the babush as well? I think also we need to be very cognizant of it's not just like a cut and dry, they don't want to evacuate, or they're waiting for the Russians, or this or that, because we really don't know everyone's individual stories. And a lot of the people in this area, which I worked so extensively with, don't have a lot of resources. They're elderly, they're scared to move. This is all they know. Their family is buried there. They've never been outside, the next 3 villages, and you're telling them to uproot their life. So, and you're also, sometimes these people like come and evacuate are not offering any support post evacuation. They also, a lot of them have animals, multiple animals. They live on a farm. And so it's not just so cut and dry. I do everything in my ability to get them out of there, but I also connect with organizations and friends. My friends Lee and Lars work out of Kramatorsk and provide assistance with civilians that want to evacuate. And because I'm in the military now, this is useful on me. I can go into I can legally go into the more dangerous parts and evacuate the civilians, whereas like NGOs and humanitarian groups have some limits there. And when I bring them out, I can hand them over to the humanitarian groups who then take it from there. But we try and get everyone out that we can, to put it simply. And typically the people that want to be in Russia have already gone to that side. If it's a gray zone, they'll walk to the Russian side.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for the detailed answer to the listener's question. And thank you again for all you do that goes above and beyond, right? Even just volunteering and being there. It really is extraordinary and inspiring. Go ahead,
I've
Sir
got a bunch
Shaggy.
I just checked my DMs and I've got a bunch of questions. I should have checked them a bit earlier. A listener was asking, how's your Ukrainian?
We already asked that, Sir
do
Shaggy.
you speak?
We already asked that. It was a double message to us.
Oh, it was a double message. Okay, all right, cool, bananas. Sorry, I was just going through my DMs. Another question is handmade woolen socks, are handmade woolen socks wanted or just shop bought ones, Rebecca?
So the homemade woolen socks, we do have a lot of grandmas here that help out with that. They're a bit thicker, and it's difficult for the homemade ones to fit inside of these combat boots, right? So for the civilian population, these hand-knitted wool socks are wonderful, but for our soldiers, it is better if they have like the industrial grade, like, fitted, formed, and easy to fit into the combat boot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. My mum used to make me some socks, and they used to have lumps in them basically, and that rubbed on my toes. It wasn't very good, but I couldn't really tell them that. I just had to wear them. So yes, those are professional ones, maybe with little silver in, so they're a little bit waterproof as well. Yeah, so professional socks for professional soldiers. Cece, welcome.
Hey, it's the middle of the night here, but hi Rebecca. I couldn't sleep.
Hi.
I was just wondering, is it more efficient and streamlined for people to send you PayPal money for things that you need, or is it better, like, is it hard for you to get stuff and people need to do the footwork of calling medical warehouses and stuff like that? Or can we just PayPal, everybody PayPal? Even if you're struggling, even $5 or $10. But I'm just wondering, like, are things hard to get right now, and so it would just be easier to throw you a couple dollars? Or do you want us to, form a full out ground assault to medical warehouses here or in
Oh,
Europe?
thank you. I answered this question a little bit earlier in terms of like the shipping and quantities. The biggest thing I've seen when people try to ship medical supplies is typically they end up shipping the expired ones. And then I have 17 boxes of expired goods to go through and have to throw away. I have my like medical sources here in Ukraine that I can directly buy from here, which is awesome. And they can send them Novus Posta. What you guys need to be calling and pushing out for is the ammunition and the defense of Ukraine, right? I can try and keep them alive, but there is nothing I can do if the Russians consistently have more ammunition than us and just outgun us, right? So the calling, the pushing, the pressuring, that should go to these institutions that provide ammunition, and lawmakers who have the policies that can actually get it to us.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because there's something called the Stand With Ukraine Act that someone else is going to go over, because I'm too tired. It's 3:45 here.
And I do
3:30.
have to run here as well, guys.
Much love to you.
Much love. How many questions did you have left up in the queue? Because I didn't want to leave anybody hanging though.
Yeah, I've got through mine actually, thinking about it. So Aria, if you wanna ask the last question.
No, let's just get through your questions. I was going to make a comment, but it can wait till after Rebecca leaves. She's given us far more of her time than was expected, and has stayed on. And I know it's very late for her, and she has stuff to do. So let's get through those three questions quickly, and I'm just going to interrupt in case if any of them happen to be ones that have already been asked, either in a similar format or just repeats of the same question. And then I see Ryan raised his hand, so if that can be done. Also afterwards, quickly, if Rebecca has time, and then we will say goodbye.
Ryan.
I don't know if my audio is worth a crap. I'm driving down the road, so you might hear a lot of background noise. Wanted to say hi to Tiramisu, and when I jumped in and started listening, I think you guys were talking about warm feet and socks, and how to create a barrier between the boots to keep socks warm or feet warm. Rebecca, if you know of a group that's in immediate need of socks, I believe we still probably have about 50 pairs. When I get back to Beka, we can post them somewhere. We had quite a few pairs towards the end of winter this year. We gave out all the ones. We were just setting them out and letting people pick whatever sizes they needed. So I'm pretty sure the majority of what we have right now are the larger sizes, but they are Czech military surplus, like wool synthetic blend. We were looking for full wool, but when somebody from Germany told us they had a bunch of Czech surplus military socks, we jumped on it because they were a really good deal. So yeah, if you know some people that need some socks and they tend to be the soldiers with the bigger size feet, I can fix you up.
Great. Ryan just sent you my Novus Posta address. So
Perfect.
yeah.
I'm guessing you probably have a new one since the last time we sent you anything, but
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Ryan. I see no more hands, but I did just bring Aria up. Not you, Aria, our co-host Aria, but there's another Aria. If you've got a quick question, stick your hand up, and then we can get it to Rebecca. No. Well, I think we've run out of then questions then, Rebecca. So I know we had you up very early in the morning.
No worries.
Thanks for coming.
Guys, it's been a
I
pleasure.
hope
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very
no,
much,
thanks for coming.
Rebecca, for your time, for answering our questions, for staying on later, and for all you do, both on the front lines and, for other people in Ukraine. It really is inspiring, and I don't think anybody here is, just talking that up. So I wish you much luck and success, and I hope you continue in safety and in good health, and that very soon this isn't needed. And on a lighter note, if Steven Seagal ends up going forward with his plan to join the front lines and die for Putin, the war might be over very soon. So some good news. But bad jokes aside, thank you very much for coming up and joining us. And I
Yeah,
hope
I've just
to
got
have
the.
you up here again in the near future. Over to you, Sir Shaggy.
Yeah, cheers. I just Aria's just squeeze one last question in from Aria, if that's okay, Rebecca.
Hello?
Hello.
Can I speak? Oh, hi. Can I speak? Yeah, just quickly. Thank you so much, Rebecca. But you don't remember me, but you a couple of times you answer my question by Instagram or something. But anyway, at the moment, I'm just a private person, and then lost a lot of donation from some organization. So that's the reason I'm here. Check up the group or volunteer people or whatever. Then if I really understand that they are doing the really good job, and that I will donate little by little. But so at the moment, urgently, I'm in the Kramatorsk, and then it's quite getting dangerous. This week is not so much, but anyway, do you know any even private person or the small organization, volunteer organization, who really need some help? Not, they don't do the social media, or they don't have a fundraising people. If you think about anything, animal or anything in the people, human, could you just DM me, please?
Absolutely. I think I just followed you on here, okay?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but could you just send me? Yeah, you helped me that, about the one, the Japanese combat medic was totally messed up, mentally totally messed up, and really left a suicidal comment. And so I just don't know who to turn. So that's why you helped him a lot. Yeah, you sent the links, and then he's fine. Absolutely, he's a wonderful, the most, the real one, not the fake, those Japanese, the volunteer fighter, or not the volunteer people. He's absolutely the real one. So that's why I'm really, really appreciate for that as well. So please, Rebecca, if you think about, somebody really need, I can donate, I just, so many, just privately I meet, and then I pay. And then of course I get so many hater as well, wherever I go, particularly in Kharkiv. But anyway, so could you, I'm sorry to take your time. Please enjoy your holiday. But anyway, could you just think about somebody, or that I can drop some money, or in the meat in the Kramatorsk
Yeah,
while
if you're first, I do actually know of a couple elderly ladies there. I won't
yeah.
disclose details, but I think they would not only. I think you visiting them and bringing them something to eat would
Yes,
mean
yes, yes, yes,
it would make their world. So I'll talk to you. I'll send you a little message later,
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, we'll
please.
stay in touch.
Yeah, I will take 1 week more. I leave, and maybe I have to go to the Kharkiv. But anyway, thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you.
everybody. Yeah, thank you. Enjoy. Yeah, the good luck and the best wishes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Any final words then, Rebecca, before you go?
No, this is probably the least anxious, or I guess stressed out I've been on this on a Twitter space. So thanks for making that atmosphere for me, you guys. I always was like notoriously stressed out on previous spaces, just trying to abide by all the rules, and I felt really welcomed and um supported by you guys. I think you can tell in my tone I'm much less tense. So sending hugs to everybody. Thank you guys for all you do, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, Rebecca. I got to say, I missed your potty mouth a little bit. I was waiting for one of those to drop, but no F-bombs today. So maybe next time. All right. Thanks very much for coming.
I just want to thank everybody before I do who has been with us for the last segment. I very much enjoyed the conversation, even as morbid as the conversation is. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot. I got a bunch of updates on the situation from a medical perspective, which I think is very valuable in how we analyze the battlefield and various other issues and situations pertaining to Ukraine.